Well, the Committee on Courts of Justice will come to order, and I'd like to ask clerk to call the roll. Open the roll. Mr. Chair, you have a quorum. All right. Well, thank you very much. I want to welcome everybody to this first meeting of the Courts of Justice Committee. We have a very heavy docket today, you may have noticed, and some bills that may have a little bit of interest among people in the room. And I want to first thank everybody for being here. I want to make sure that all perspectives are heard on these bills. Many of the bills that are on the docket are bills that are identical to bills that were heard last year, and the composition of the committee, I'd remind you, is identical to the composition of the committee last year. We have passed out to members on the dais list of the bills and for ease of reference have tried to identify the bills that you've seen before in hopes that it may refresh your recollection. We're going to start, and just so you have a little bit of a roadmap to how we're going to proceed today, and with apologies to the patrons who are here, it's primarily because of the nature of the docket. We are not today necessarily going to go in order of the sign-ups. So what we are going to do is dispose of some bills that patrons have asked to be re-referred or carried over or stricken. Then we're going to move to the larceny threshold. Then we are going to move to universal background checks. On the gun bills that are going to be heard, I suspect that a fair number of people in the room have a passing interest in those bills. And what we're going to do today is on the first bill, the uniform background check, we're going to give a little bit of extra time to proponents and opponents to have your say. We are going to use the time clock today. For the first bill, we're going to give pro and con 10 minutes each to speak to that. And I would encourage you, if you have broad policy statements about Second Amendment or proliferation of handguns or other guns, make it at that time during the comments on that bill. And members of the committee are more than happy to hear it. If you have written comments, you're more than welcome to pass up your written comments, even if we do not get an opportunity to hear your personal comments from the dais. On subsequent bills, we're going to limit time much more significantly and ask people to confine their comments to the specifics of that particular bill in order that we can get through this rather hefty docket. So to begin with, we have a number of bills that need to be re-referred. First, we have Senate Bill 56, Senator DeSteff's Line of Duty Act, which needs to be re-referred to the Committee on Finance. Do I hear a motion? So moved. It's been moved and seconded. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed. That is re-referred. And I will say that although we have a electronic voting system, on some of these matters that are dealt with by consensus, we're going to take a voice vote. If anybody votes no or asks to put it up on the board, we'll do it. But in order to move along, we're going to do that. Senate Bill 253, Senator Dance's bill dealing with unclaimed property, needs to be re-referred to the Committee on Commerce and Labor. Is there a motion? It's been moved and seconded. All in favor signify by saying aye. All opposed. It's re-referred. Senate Bill 320, Senator Ruff's reversion of property donated to the Virginia National Guard, needs to go to general laws. Is there a motion? So it's been moved and seconded. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed. That's re-referred. Senate Bill 362, Senator Howell's Qualified Education Loan Servicers bill, needs to be re-referred to the Committee on Education and Health. Is there a motion? So moved. It's been moved and seconded. All in favor signify by saying aye. All opposed. That's re-referred. At the request of the patron, Senate Bill 215, Senator Cosgrove's renewal of concealed handgun permits. He has asked that bill to be carried over for the year. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Is there a second? All in favor signify by saying aye. All opposed, that's carried over. Also, we have five bills that, that at the request of the patron are to be stricken from the docket. Senate Bill 595, Senator Vogel's bill. Senate Bill 596, also Senator Vogel's. Senator Howell's Bill 68, Senator Stewart's Bill 641, and Senator Stewart's 209. The patrons have all requested that these bills be stricken from the docket. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Is there a second? It's been moved and seconded. All in favor of striking these in a block signify by saying aye. All opposed, those are stricken. Next, we're going to take up the larceny threshold. And what I would suggest is that we take up Senate Bill 105 first. And there's a method to this, and if I have incorrectly gauged the temperature of the committee, I stand to be corrected. But Senator Suderline has a broad larceny threshold bill, raising the larceny threshold to $500 for all property crimes, not simply larceny of petty larceny of goods. Senator Suderline.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think you did a good job explaining what the bill does. It's straightforward, just as you said. Increases from 200 to 500. There's several categories. Something that we've discussed here in the Senate before. I think that inflation alone, this still doesn't even keep up with inflation. From what the last time that we enacted this provision. It comes with broad support from several groups on the left and groups on the right, like the Virginia Tea Party Federation. I look forward to your questions. It's a pretty straightforward bill.
All right. Anybody else? Anybody have any questions of the patron? We have a number of bills dealing with the larceny threshold, and I suspect a number of those patrons are here. Senate Bills 21, 157, 221, 102, 220, 472, and 138. Many of those are what are called the skinny bills that deal only with one category. There are a couple, Senator Saslaw's, Senator Suderline's, that are the broad property crime threshold bills. If any patron has, of any of those bills, has anything they wish to add, I'd be more than happy to invite any of those patrons to address the committee.
Mr. Chairman?
Senator Reeves.
I wouldn't mind rolling mine into Senator Suderline's bill when the appropriate motion is ready. Senate Bill 472, Mr. Chairman.
I'm sorry, somebody was talking into my ear.
At the appropriate time, it's applicable. I wouldn't mind rolling mine into Senator Suderline, listed as chief co-patron.
I suspect that all of the patrons, unless anybody objects to having theirs rolled in, might want to have theirs rolled into this as chief co-patrons.
Mr. Chair. Right.
Yeah, Senator Peterson.
And I have one of the bills, and my bill is slightly different. It's broad, so it's the same as Senator Suderline's, but mine goes to 1,000. And since seems like at this point, that's kind of what we're talking about, I would like to address that.
Senator Peterson.
All right. Do you mind if I go up to the front?
Not at all.
Thank you.
Sorry.
Guns.
Somebody just needs
Ladies and gentlemen of the committee, this is Senate Bill 138, and I want to thank Senator Suderline. He's already introduced the subject. My bill is also a broad bill, which would basically take the felony threshold level of $200 and move it to 1,000 for all of the property crimes that are referenced in 18.2, Section 18.2. Just a little bit of context. I actually originally brought this bill in 2002, and one of my witnesses was Senator Joe Gartland, who had brought the bill that had changed it from 100 to 200 back in, I think it was 1982. And so it's been quite a while since we've changed it. I think inflation alone, and you may have the statistics, if he were to take $200 today, it would be worth about $200 back when we changed it, it would be worth about $660 today, according to the most recent statistics I've seen. I think 1,000 makes sense. It's an easy to understand number. I also know that most states in the union have gone to that similar level. So, Mr. Chair, I do have the Secretary of Public Safety here, and I know he would like to speak to this.
Yeah, of course. Secretary.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, good to be with you today. Good morning. Asif's going to be kind enough to hold up the poster because since we're talking about raising it, very pleased with Senator Peterson's presentation and Senator Sutherland's bill. But if you look at the chart and what other states have done, actually $1,000 would put us about in the middle. Yeah, you can see all the number of states with respect to the $1,000, Idaho, Iowa, Wyoming even, and would still be in the minority of states at $500. So I recognize that this would be increasing the larceny threshold is one of the priorities of this governor to raise it from $200. It hasn't been raised since 1980. But again, if we're going to raise it, $1,000 actually would put us about in the middle with respect to our sister states. So I would ask for consideration of Senator Peterson's bill.
Mr. Secretary, I was surprised to see you stand up. I listened with great interest to the governor's speech on Saturday, in which he said that he doesn't lie, cheat, or steal, or tolerate those who do. So I thought maybe you were freelancing here today.
I don't understand the comment, but
Well, I'll tell you what, as a fellow VMI guy, I'll take your side and explain it to you. How's that?
I'd be happy to. I think it is
Those bright lines get in the way
I
sometimes.
think it was a fantastic speech. And if it inspired you all to consider doing the right thing, then I would ask you to consider Senator Peterson's bill.
I think it made some of us contrarians, and we may be inclined to support this bill.
Good.
Senator Norman.
Senator Peterson, would you like a vote on your bill?
Sure. I mean, if you're going to pass it.
Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman.
Hang on, Senator Norman.
My question was, do you want a up or down vote on your bill?
You know, it really doesn't matter to me whether my bill passes or not. It matters that this concept passes, Senator. So if you want to somehow have my bill defeated, that's fine, or passed.
I move Senator Peterson's bill. Second.
Okay. All right, it's been moved and seconded that, what number is yours?
138.
Mr. Chairman.
Right. Senator Sasslaw.
Yeah, I put in what you called a skinny bill for $500. I mean, I could vote for 1,000, but as to what you said about the governor made the remark that we shouldn't tolerate anybody who lies, cheats, or steals. You and I both know this room be emptied out, including some of us. Okay.
Any further discussion? Anybody in the audience wish to be heard on this bill? We're going to have 3 minutes per side. Those in support of the bill, step up. Step up.
Good morning and happy Martin Luther King Jr. Day. My name is Reverend Dr. Keith Savage. I'm the senior pastor of First Baptist Church in Manassas, Virginia. I'm also one of the leaders of Voice, which is Virginia's Organized for Interfaith Community Engagement. I'm hearing the conversation that is going on right here, and I appreciate that. We actually are advocating for $1,500, and let me tell you why we're advocating for $1,500. We know, as you've heard from the senators that have urged, that we're at $200, which hasn't been changed since 1980. And looking at inflation, 500 and 1,000 really just puts us at the bottom, even with inflation. And so we think that to put us in the middle of where states are, 1,500 is what really would put us realistic in the middle of all where southern states are. This is really not just an economic thing. It's also a moral authority. And I'm standing here with moral authority. And here's why I'm saying this, because God's word reminds us that it's without argument that crimes deserve some sort of punishment. But in our efforts to protect the property and the security of persons and commerce, we are never to dispose or devalue the human potential and possibility for redemption in our fellow man. That's why God's word says, hate the sin, but not the sinner. And when we set levels so low that someone who steals a pair of expensive glasses or maybe a cell phone, what we're saying, not only do we hate the sin, but we hate the sinner. And our job is redemption. One of the things we do in the Commonwealth is that we care about one another, that this is a moral as much as it is a civil and a criminal type of document that we're looking at. All the major faiths teach in our covenant of second chances. And we as faith communities and you as politicians, we are interdependent on matters of justice and rehabilitative possibilities. And we are both charged to remind people and communities that everyone can and should be given a second chance to be productive and live meaningful lives. So your vote will define your moment on where you stand with this. Your vote will say whether you think people deserve second chances. Your vote will define whether you think that you are to hate the sin and hate the sinner, or whether you are to hate the sin, but set a level so that we cannot hate the sinner, but give them a chance for a second chance. Otherwise, you're telling people your possibilities in education and housing and other things, we don't care. We'd rather throw you away for stealing a pair of sunglasses or for an expensive pair of jeans. That's not who we are. That's not how we should behave. And so I'm asking you not only to look at this from civil and criminal, but understand your moral imperative from your different faith perspectives. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. And I hate to tell you, we've just got about 15 seconds longer. Anybody else wish to step up and speak or be recognized? Yes, ma'am.
Hi, my name is LaVon Williams, and I just wanted to comment on this bill. Personally, I am a convicted felon. Reasons that I am not proud of. I alone take responsibilities of my actions. However, I believe that everyone should have a chance. I believe that everyone makes their own decisions. They choose to make those decisions. There's just a couple of things that I think that should be thought about. Is it moral? Is it ethical? And society says that it's wrong to steal. I would be the first to say that I was not always an honest person. I have been thinking about this issue for a long time. I wonder if the policies change, whether people will take advantage of it. Thinking that just because they stay under the minimum, whether or not, they won't be severely punished.
Ma'am, I thank you very much for your comments and registration of your support for this bill. If you want to step up and state your name, organization, and whether you support the bill, that's all we've got time for.
My name is Jesse Frierson. I stand to represent the Virginia State Conference and ACP.
Thank you very much.
And we support the bill with tacit approval.
Thank you.
Great.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Chairman, this is Kevin Maurer, Virginia Catholic Conference. We support Senator Peterson's bill to raise it to 1,000.
Thank you very much. Yes, ma'am? Do you wish to speak in favor? All right, those in opposition.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Patrina Jones with the Virginia Retail Merchants Association. There are victims to this crime. They are real people and hardworking constituents. None of the proposals today have language about restitution, shoplifting prevention education programs to reduce recidivism, or strengthening charges for organized retail crime like an additional conspiracy charge, or first offender penalty alternatives. Many court systems use the National Association for Shoplifting Prevention to conduct educational programs. That association studied 15,000 offenders that are in the prevention programs and found that they caused $28 million in estimated losses before their arrest incident. 46% of the adult group admitted to being repeat offenders, and they averaged stealing 48 times before being caught. 10 billion of organized retail crime dollars goes to Mexico every year to fund narco-terrorism. Millions of shoplifters go about quietly stealing billions of low-dollar merchandise under the radar, avoiding penalty for the collective value of their offenses.
I just note that you've used half the time of the opponents.
Yes, and so as our crime prevention partners turn their backs, where are we, the retailers, supposed to go? Thank you.
Thank you.
Good morning, Mr. Chair.
Morning, Ms.
Nancy
Parr.
Parr, Commonwealth Attorney for the City of Chesapeake, here on behalf of the Virginia Association of Commonwealth Attorneys. And Mr. Chair, the Commonwealth Attorneys Association, we oppose this particular bill, but the association does support an increase to $500. However, we do oppose any inclusion of any offenses other than larceny or charges deemed to be larceny. So we oppose the inclusion of the arson, 2 arson charges, the damaging, destroying research products, and destroying vessels and damaging facilities that provide public services or utilities. We oppose including those charges in here. So I think you referred to it as a skinny bill. We support the skinny bills. Thank you.
Sure.
Dana Schroeder,
Ms.
on
Parr?
Out of curiosity, if you had a skinny bill for $1,000, just plain larceny, first-time offender, would you all support that?
Mr. Chair, the association, when we met last week, we approved $500. We did not go up higher than that.
So, I mean, that's a yes, I think.
I take it as a yes.
Mr. Chairman, Dana Schroeder.
No, she wouldn't support above 500.
Right. Yes, ma'am, Dana.
Dana Schroeder on behalf of the police chiefs. We actually share the position of the Commonwealth Attorneys Association. When you get to $1,000, making restitution is still $1,000, and so we share the position of the Commonwealth Attorneys at the threshold of 500.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, Jody Roth with Virginia Retail Federation. We have always had a longstanding policy of opposing any increase in the larceny threshold.
Thank you. Anybody else wish to register their opposition? All right. Senator Reeves.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a substitute motion. Mr. Chairman, if we could take Senate Bill 138, roll it into 105, and any other patron that has that bill would like to be listed as a chief co-patron, that they could do so at this time, and that would be my motion, Mr. Chairman.
All right. So that would be all of the bills that I previously listed, 101, 157, 221, 102, 220, 472, and 138 into 105.
Second.
All right, it's been moved and seconded, substitute motion. Substitute motion is before us, which is the broad $500 threshold. Clerk will open the roll.
You ought to vote no.
Let's try it. Roll them in and report. All right, clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 10, nays 5.
What the hell? The bill is reported. Thank you very much. Yes, sir.
Wait. The bill's reported.
That's right.
Where, oh.
That was to report.
Oh, okay. Yeah. No.
Having voted on the prevailing side, I would ask that we reconsider the vote by which we passed Senate Bill 105 and rolled the remaining bills into it.
It's been moved, and is there a second? Second. It's been moved and seconded to reconsider the vote. All in favor of reconsideration signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed. Motion is back before us to roll them into 105 and report. That is the substitute motion. This means that we would be reporting out the broad $500 threshold, so there's no confusion, okay? Clerk will open the roll.
Ayes 12, noes 3.
Right, bill's reported. Next, we're going to move to the universal background check, which we're going to take. Is Senator Eben here? Well, maybe we won't move to this.
I'm gonna ask.
I think we need,
Retail merchants if I steal candy bars.
why don't we take, since Senator Black is here, we'll take Senate Bill 48 while we summon Senator Eben for his couple of bills.
Thank you,
Senator
Mr.
Black.
Chairman. If Phil Van Cleve could come up, and also the rep from NRA, that would save us some time. Mr. Chairman, this is the constitutional carry legislation. I know most of you are very familiar with it. We do have a line amendment that was proposed by the state police. The state police were concerned when they reviewed the bill that with all of the work that we've done on mental illness and that sort of thing, that if we allowed constitutional carry for out-of-staters, that there would be no check on mental illness. And I think that was a wise decision. And the clerk has the line amendment, perhaps could read that.
All right.
Mr. Chairman, the amendment reads on line 56, it would include to obtain a resident concealed handgun permit. And then on line 57, it would strike out or subsection B of 18.2, 308.06.
And
all right. Those amendments are before us. You want to speak to those amendments?
Just to say that all that they do is to limit the scope of the bill to Virginia residents only.
All right. Is there a motion to adopt those amendments?
I move them in a block.
Been moved and seconded. All in favor of adopting the amendment, signify by saying aye. All opposed. All right, the amendments are adopted. All right, anybody have any questions of the patron? Anybody wish to speak in favor of this bill?
So this would basically do away with you would need to get a permit.
Yes, Philip Van Cleve, the Virginia Citizens Defense League. We're fine with the change, the amendment. And there are 13 states that currently have a full constitutional carry even for non-residents. Several of them have, in addition to that, have what we're talking about here, which is only for residents. And every state that's done this, nobody's backed away from it. It's worked out well everywhere they've done it. So we stand in support. Thank you.
Anybody else wish to speak in favor? Next in opposition. Yes, sir.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee.
Good morning.
My name is Andrew Goddard with Virginia Center for Public Safety. I keep hearing this term constitutional carry. In fact, that is a total misnomer. The Constitution of the country does not allow for the carrying of concealed weapons. The Constitution does not mention the carrying of concealed weapons. The people who wrote the Constitution would turn over in their graves at the concept of carrying concealed weapons. It was not something the gentleman would do. And the Supreme Court's decision in Heller versus District of Columbia very clearly states that the regulation of concealed carry is not in opposition to the Second Amendment. Therefore, if the regulation is not in opposition to it, it cannot be an absolute right to carry concealed. So we cannot say that there's a constitutional support for concealed carry. Concealed carry is a great idea in theory. It has not worked out in practice.
Thank you very much. Yes, sir.
Hi, Josh Horowitz with the Educational Fund to Stop Gun Violence. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for allowing me to testify today. I would just make the point that there's new research from John Donahue just published recently that shows that the states that adopted concealed carry over the last 10 years have had an increase in violent crime of between 13 to 15%. That is making the Commonwealth a more dangerous place. And I think extending that in light of the research showing that concealed carry increases violent crime is not wise, and I would urge the committee to vote no on this.
Thank you very much.
Good morning. My name is Lori Haas. I'm with the Coalition to Stop Gun Violence and the Educational Fund to Stop Gun Violence, and we oppose the bill. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Yes, sir.
Mr. Chairman, Brian Moran, Secretary of Public Safety and Homeland Security. The administration opposes the bill.
All right, thank you very much.
Motion.
Bills before us.
Mr. Chairman.
Senator Norman.
Excuse me. I move that Senate Bill 48 be reported and re-referred to the Committee on Finance.
All right. Is there a second?
Second.
All right, it's been moved and seconded the bill be reported and re-referred to the Committee on Finance. Clerk will open the roll. All right.
Ayes 10, noes 5.
All right, bill is reported and re-referred to Committee on Finance. Next, we're going to take up the universal background check bills. I think I saw Senator Eben come back into the room, or I thought I did.
Mr. Chair.
There he is.
Mr. Chair.
And Senator Peterson.
Could we reconsider that last vote? I think we had a mistake.
Is there a second? All right, it's been moved and seconded to reconsider the vote by which Senate Bill 48 was reported and re-referred to the Committee on Finance. So all in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed. Motion's reconsidered. The bill is back before us on a motion to report and re-refer. All in favor, record your votes, and opposed.
Wait, there you go. That's what you wanted.
All right.
Ayes 9, noes 6.
All right. Bill is reported and re-referred. Next, we are going to take up the universal background checks, and I've scribbled down the numbers of the bills that I think are included, and just asked for a double check. But we have Senate Bill 5, Senator Evans, Senate Bill 412, Senator Lucas, 432, Senator Wexton, and 145, Senator Edwards. And I don't know whether there's a preference as to which of these is the vehicle. I'm sorry, Senator Serville, what number is yours? 447. 447. Got that? All right. And I think that's all. So if anybody else wishes to address the general principle, you may want to join Senator Eben. But Senator Eben, floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We're here to discuss SB 5. Now, SB 5, I think it's pretty straightforward, requiring a background check for a firearm transfer between an unlicensed seller or giver, with an exception for family members, which is defined in the code. And I wanted to call to the committee's attention that this is not just a theory, but there are universal background checks, or not universal. The background checks that exist in Virginia have turned away people. We know nationally those who go through a background check have turned away approximately 3 million transactions. That's 3 million people who would have been eligible to purchase a gun who were turned away with those criteria. Further, we know in Virginia, in 2017, at last count, it was 3,245 attempted sales in Virginia that were turned away from federally licensed dealers. In 2016, 3,500 and so on. We also know, sadly, if current trends continue over the next 4 years, 3,540 people will be killed with guns if our current trends continue, and that's 3,540 too many. I'm not suggesting in any way that if we pass this that a full 3,540 people won't be killed, but clearly there'll be less gun fatalities. We don't want guns falling into the wrong hands. That's why we have this bill into dangerous hands. I'm available to take questions, or perhaps other sponsors would like to speak first.
Any other patrons of any of those bills? And And of course, we'd be more than happy to take these up separately, but I suppose that you all would like yours rolled together in some fashion. Okay.
Yes, sir.
Senator Servell.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. My legislation is similar to the bill I put in last year, which you saw. It has a few more exceptions than Senator Evans' bill, which I just wanted to mention. I'm carrying it to request the Educational Fund to Stop Gun Violence. And again, mine is 447. Mine has exceptions for a bona fide gift made to a member of immediate family, transfer by operation of law, transfer made pursuant to an estate transfer, and a transfer made pursuant to a gun trust, transfer made at a firearms show, and the state police conduct a check as requested, a transfer necessary to prevent imminent death or great bodily harm, a transfer that occurs in the continuous presence of the owner, an antique firearm or a possession that occurs, transfer that occurs at a shooting range. I believe those exceptions cover, I think, virtually every exception that we hear people worry about. The only additional one, I know Senator Edwards has concern that a transfer to a personal friend be also included as an exception, which I have no objection to that amendment if the committee desires to make such an amendment. But I just wanted to point out that my bill has a few more exceptions to the universal background check rule than I think Senator Evans does.
Thank you very much. Senator Lucas.
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. I think both of the patrons of their bills have pretty much outlined what's in my bill as well, but I'd just like to indicate that the governor included $392,356 in his budget package for 7 positions to process additional background checks for firearm transactions in 2019 and $525,141 for 2020. Additionally, the governor has included $50,000 for a Woodrum amendment. And I apologize for my voice, but I did 3 inaugural balls this weekend. I'm not feeling so well. Not feeling so well. I know.
All right. Any questions?
Mr. Chair.
Right here. Somewhere down there. Senator Peterson.
And maybe Senator Servell might be the best one to answer. And this is a situation in my own family, in my father's estate, we have probably 8 to 10 firearms, most of which date back to the 20s and 30s. If we were to pass those on to nieces, nephews, grandchildren, would that be covered under your bill? Because my biggest concern is that any transfer, even one that's made within a family, would somehow be criminalized.
No, it's covered by subsections 3 and 4. 3 is made by the administrator of an estate or the trustee of a trust created by will, and 4 has to do with the gun trust. But 3 would cover it. And if we accepted Senator Edwards' amendment, it would cover your John Riggins example from last year.
Right, that was going to be my next question. If you give a gift to a friend, the John Riggins example.
Not covered by my bill as it stands, but Senator Edwards wanted to make an amendment to it, which would pick up Riggins giving shotguns to the Hogs.
Yeah.
When the Redskins won the Super Bowl in 83, John Riggins gave a shotgun to each member of the Hogs.
Right. Edwards would take care of that.
All right.
Yeah.
All right.
If I could just add to Senator Peterson, if I might, we're amenable, at least in my bill, to accepting that as an amendment if you prefer.
What I suggest is, if we could move those exceptions that we've just articulated into Senator Evans' bill, essentially move the language of Servell into Senator Evans' bill, plus the Edwards exception. I would make that motion.
So the motion is personal friend?
Mr. Chairman, I think the motion would be to take lines 38 through 59 of my bill and substitute it for the exceptions in Senator Evans' bill and add, at least on my bill, personal friend on line 42 between 2 and A. So it says to a personal friend or a member of the person's immediate family.
Well, all right. Let me ask counsel, what does from the perspective of a criminal defense lawyer, what does the addition of personal friend do to your ability to defend one of your well-meaning clients who may be charged under this section?
Mr. Chairman, I can guarantee you that anyone charged under this section is going to claim that they were making a transfer to a personal friend.
Does it have any limitation as to how long they must have been a personal friend?
No, sir. No, sir.
Like
Personal friends can be
seconds.
formed overnight.
Mr. Chair.
All right. I just want to make sure people know what they're voting on.
Well, if it's a conveyance for money, that might be a pretty good piece of evidence that it's not.
All right. All right. Motion to amend is before us. Been moved and seconded to adopt the amendment. All in favor of adopting the amendment, signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed? All right. The amendment is adopted.
I move we report the bill.
All right. It's been moved that let's without. Yeah, we're going to hear from supporters and opponents, but the motion will be, I believe, to roll Senate Bill 5 together with 412, 432, 145, and 447 and report them as amended. Right? All in favor of rolling them together as amended signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed. The bills are now all rolled together into, do you have a preference as to which one?
Senate Bill 1.
Senate
I'm
Bill
sorry,
5.
five.
Okay. Now we're going to hear from supporters. 5. Oh, and and at the appropriate time, the appropriate motion will be to report and re-refer to the Committee on Finance.
Can you repeat those bills we're rolled together?
It is Senate Bill 5, 412, 432, 145, and 447. Yes, sir.
Mr. Chairman,
And we're
Andrew
going to have
Goddard,
10
Virginia
minutes.
Center for Public Safety. I've been here this is my 11th year, primarily because of this concept. You know everything that I've said in the past about it. I would simply remind you that the law as it stands today is that certain people have no right to purchase a firearm. The law does not say that they have no right to purchase a firearm that is new from a dealer.
They're going to use it.
So the only way we can identify people is by background check. If we don't apply a background check, then we're letting people bypass current law. We should be checking everyone that buys a firearm from someone who's selling it to a stranger. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Yes, sir.
Hi, Josh Horowitz, the Educational Fund to Stop Gun Violence. We support the bill. Thank you very much for allowing me to testify. Virginia has a gun death problem. In the last 5 years, the gun homicide rate is up 59% through 2016. In the last 10 years, the suicide rate, the firearm suicide rate has gone up 21%. These gun deaths affect urban communities and rural communities alike. It's time that we take this problem seriously and do something to save lives in Virginia. Many people in this audience have suffered losses of friends in our cities. Many people in this community, in this audience, have lost friends to suicide all over the state. Gun violence, homicide, and suicide affects everybody throughout our great Commonwealth. The good news is that research shows that background checks are associated with lower firearm homicide rates and lower firearm suicide rates. We've got a problem in Virginia with gun deaths. Research shows this bill will save lives. It's time to take this seriously and pass this bill. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Mr. Chairman, could we ask everyone in the audience who's in support of this bill to stand, please?
Certainly. All right. Well, thank you very much. Appreciate your making the trip and investing your time to come down here and register your support of this bill. Thank you. Ms. Haas?
Good morning, Mr. Chairman and
Good
members
morning.
of the committee. My name is Lori Haas. I'm with the Educational Fund to Stop Gun Violence, and we support the bill. We've supported this bill every year for over 10 years now. Since we've seen in those 10 years, as Mr. Horowitz testified, we've seen an increase in gun homicides, an increase in gun suicides. It's a public health problem for the Commonwealth of Virginia. In states that have universal background checks, we have fewer law enforcement officers shot and killed. We have fewer intimate partners shot and killed. We have fewer suicides. This is an effort tailored to prohibit persons who are prohibited by law from easy access to firearms. We know that everybody on this committee cares about the Commonwealth of Virginia and the constituents in the Commonwealth of Virginia and wants to do a good job. And we ask that you think about the public safety aspects of this and support the bill. And I would also just like to point out in a recent Quinnipiac poll and for 2017, 90% of Republicans when polled support universal background checks. This is a good issue for everybody. This is a public safety issue, and we appreciate your consideration and your support. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your advocacy. Yes, sir.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, Kevin Maurer, Virginia Catholic Conference. We support the protection of all human life, and we support universal background checks.
Thank you. Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, my name is Martina Lyons, and I represent the Virginia chapters of the Brady Campaign to Prevent Gun Violence. We support this bill. We would posit there is no greater responsibility than the members of this committee than to ensure the safety of the public. This is a common sense, pragmatic approach to do just that. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. Secretary, welcome.
Chairman, member of the committee, Brian Moran, Secretary of Public Safety and Homeland Security, and this is indeed a priority of the governor. He believes in reducing gun violence, and this is the cleanest method by which to do that, keeping the hands out of dangerous individuals by passing a mandatory background check would accomplish that. We have the infrastructure. Our Virginia State Police does a wonderful job. They've actually interdicted 3,500 individuals that should not purchase, so we know those purchases are being done or at least attempted in those instances. So mandatory background check would accomplish exactly what we're trying to do. And I might add, you know, we 2 years ago, we went through a very hard-fought compromise around voluntary background checks. We were hoping those would have been more robust, and frankly, the data does not support that. And so, you know, we attempted voluntary, and now with the data of the last 2 years, we need to take that next step and make it mandatory, and I hope the committee considers that. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Anybody else wish to speak in support? Yes, ma'am.
Hi, good morning. Thank you. My name's Kristen Kalasia. I'm not a lobbyist. I'm a constituent of Senator Sturtevant's.
We're going to listen more carefully to you.
Well, I would just like to say I support these bills. It seems simple to me. If you can't pass a background check, you shouldn't be able to purchase a gun from someone.
Thank you for being here. Yes, ma'am.
Hi, good morning. My name is Robin Lowry. I'm also a constituent. I'm not a lobbyist. I'm a constituent of Senator Sturtevant's. And I also support universal background checks for gun sales. I believe that this is a common sense measure that we can take that will save lives, and it does not harm law-abiding citizens. Thank you.
Well, thank you for investing your time to come down here. Yes, ma'am.
Good morning. My name is Joanne Sweeney. I'm a constituent of Senator Sturtevant's, and I'm a member of Liberal Women of Chesterfield County and beyond, and we support the criminal background checks as well.
Well, thank you for being here. Anybody else? Yes, sir.
Good morning, members of the, chair members. My name is Dr. Wes Bellamy, Service City Councilman in Charlottesville, Virginia. I would also like to express my support for this bill.
Well, thank you for coming down.
Mr. Chairman, I forgot, I neglected to mention, I'm also a constituent of Senator Sturtevant.
I'm Gail Sue Miller. I'm also a constituent of Senator Sturtevant, and I would support this bill. I hope you will too.
Thank you. Yes, ma'am.
Hi, I'm not a lobbyist. I'm a constituent. My name is Carol Ray. I support this.
Thank you, Ms. Ray. Anybody else? We're giving you, remember, a little bit more time on this bill than others. Yes, ma'am.
Hi, my name's Heather Folio. I'm a constituent of Senator Peterson's and Moms Demand Action volunteer, and we 100% support background checks.
Listen up, Senator Peterson. Thank you for being here. Anybody else? All right. Come right ahead.
I'm Stair Calhoun. I'm a constituent of Senator Saslaws, and I support this bill.
All right. Thank you very much. Anybody else? Going once, going twice? All right. Anybody wish to speak in opposition to this bill? All right. All right. Yes, sir.
Hi, my name is John Lott.
Step up.
Oh, sorry. Thanks. Yeah, my name is John Lott, president of the Crime Prevention Research Center. And I just want to say that everybody wants to try to stop criminals from getting guns. The problem is that there are certain fundamental flaws in the background check system that actually makes it more likely that they end up stopping law-abiding, poor, and minorities than it is to actually stop criminals. If you look at the last 5 years that we have the annual reports for the National Instant Background Check System, there were over 400,000 people that were stopped. Only 460 of those were referred for prosecution, and only 209 successful prosecutions occur. That's well less than 0.1% of these cases. We heard earlier the mention of the number of 3 million, and that's been used a lot of times. But with the right terminology is that you should say that there have been 3 million initial denials, not 3 million dangerous, prohibited people that have been stopped. And the real problem is that it's one thing to stop somebody who's a felon. It's another thing to stop somebody simply because they have a name similar to a felon from being stopped. And that's virtually everybody who gets stopped is a false positive. And if you look at it, it's particularly minorities who are harmed as a result of this. People tend to have names similar to others in their racial groups. Hispanics have names similar to other Hispanics. Blacks tend to have names similar to other blacks. 30% of black males almost are prohibited from owning guns because of past criminal history. Whose names are their names most likely to be confused with? Other law-abiding good black males who want to go and obtain a gun to protect themselves and their families. You know, when you fill out the 4473 form to buy a gun, you put down your name, your social security number, your race, your height, your address, and your birthday. And you think all that information is being used. In fact, what you find is that they use roughly phonetically similar names. So somebody who's John Smith with an I and Smith with a Y and an E, as far as the National Instant Background Check System is concerned, those are the same last names. These things can be fixed, but they're not. And the problem with having these additional background checks is you're going to make more false positives so that many of the most vulnerable people are going to be stopped from buying guns. The second issue is the cost that's involved. In Washington, D.C., for example, neighbor here, in order to do a background check on a private transfer, it costs $125. There are places in the country where you can have it done for as cheaply as $55. Background checks normally cost money, but you don't see it for most background checks because it's not like a sales tax that you add on top of the purchase of the gun. It's in the price of the gun. And whether it's $55 or $125, the problem is it's basically poor individuals, many of the people who are living in high crime urban areas, that may be enough to prevent them from being able to legally go and buy a gun to protect themselves and their families. Again, I would argue this is something, as an economist, that could be fixed. The question is, who should pay for these background checks? Should it be the law-abiding individual who goes out of their way to go and have the check being done? Or should, if you believe that it reduces crime, and I don't, but if you believe that it does, then it benefits everybody. And it seems like at that point it should be paid for out of general revenue rather than making the particularly law-abiding individual who you probably don't have anything to worry about go through the process and bear that cost. And so you could pay for it out of general revenue. If you really believe that this is a benefit, that the benefits are greater than the costs, then pay for it out of general revenue would be an easy amendment to fix that. And I'll mention two final things. One is the polls. They've put this on the ballot in many places. In November 2016, it was on the ballot in 2 states, Nevada and Maine. It lost by 4 percentage points in Maine. It won by 0.8% in Nevada. In both cases, the proponents with Michael Bloomberg outspent the opponents by either 9-1 or 6-1. And so to go and cite polls where they say that there's 90% support or 80% support, I would go and argue there's no place where this has been on the ballot where you get anything even remotely close to that in terms of support. And finally, just the research. There's no peer-reviewed study by an economist that finds that background checks reduce crime. There's overwhelming research by criminologists, peer-reviewed, finds no benefit. And there's a simple reason. If I had time, I'd go through that, but I was told to limit it to 5 minutes. But I appreciate your time here.
Well, Dr. Lott, I appreciate your coming and joining us this morning. And I don't know whether other members of the committee know who you are, but maybe they want to look you up on Wikipedia. So
right.
Thank you for being
Thank
here.
you very
We
much.
really appreciate your investment of time.
Philip Van Cleve, Virginia Citizens Defense League. Other states have, those that have universal background checks. Illinois is one of them. You cannot buy a gun without having to go through a background check. And we've seen the crime rates in Chicago. And there they actually surveyed criminals, and 97% didn't go through the background check. And yet they're a state that you have to. So that's a real problem. Also, one of our board members is an FFL, and she says that right now the delays are an hour to get approved, and this will only stress that system more, one that's already getting stretched out. So we strongly oppose. Thank you.
Hello, Erin Looper with the National Rifle Association. The NRA opposes expanding background checks because simply background checks do not stop criminals from getting firearms. Federal law requires firearms dealers to do a background check regardless of location. To initiate this background check before selling or otherwise transferring a firearm to a person who is not a dealer. Federal studies have repeatedly shown that persons in prison for firearm crimes get their firearms mostly through theft, the black market, and family members. Less than 1% of them get them at gun shows. ATF has also said that nearly half of the illegally trafficked firearms originate with straw purchases, which is people who are passing background checks to go through, they go through them to give them to criminals who are not able to pass a background check themselves. So on behalf of the NRA, we ask that you oppose these bills. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Yes, sir.
I'm David Hicks, constituent of Senator Chafin, and I'd like to speak to the issue of false positives. Anybody recognize my name? David Hicks. You heard of a terrorist, the first one ever convicted under the federal law, locked up in Guantanamo, from Australia by the name of David Hicks? I don't want to tell you how many planes I've missed, how many gun sales I've been denied or delayed on to where somebody else bought the firearm. False positives are a serious problem for honest citizens. Many of those denials of getting on planes took place when I was a federal employee with top secret clearance and the credentials to prove it. The system is seriously flawed and damages law-abiding citizens. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much. Appreciate you making the trip. Yes, sir.
Mr. Chairman, ladies and gentlemen, Bob Sadler, South Richmond. I just want to make 3 quick points. One of your first and foremost duties—
You a constituent of Senator?
I am not a constituent of Senator Sturtevant. One of your foremost duties as a lawmaker is when you look at a bill to ask what is the potential for abuse. And next to the rate of fire and firearms bill that you'll be hearing later, no bill is more open to abuse than this one. California has universal background checks. They've also got warrant squads going door to door. So does Connecticut. So does New York. In fact, in Buffalo, New York, a widow's wake was interrupted by the police knocking on the door, wanting her to turn over her deceased husband's firearms. Now, we just heard from the secretary, they have the infrastructure for this. I don't know about you, but that scares me. Now, Mr. Hicks also spoke of false positives. The overwhelming majority are false positives. Mr. Lott is the most preeminent statistician in the country, and he has the hard data on this. As for 90% supporting background checks, if Lieutenant Hook were here from the state police, he would tell you that those voluntary background checks are running less than 2 per show. And I'm out of time. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you very much. I'm sorry, if you want to step up and register tell us your name and your organization, tell us whether you support or oppose the bill, that'd be fine. We're out of time.
All right. I'll make it brief. My name is Pat Webb. I'm a
We've just got-
constituent of Ryan McDougal. I am opposed to this bill.
Thank you.
The fact that these background checks have racist origins should have you all
All
concerned.
right, thank you very much. All right. Sarah Eben.
Yeah, just to wrap up.
Wrap it up.
Very quickly. It's clear the purpose of these background
Hey,
checks.
excuse me, Adam, 1 second. We recognize those in the room who supported the bill. If those in the room who oppose the bill would stand up and be acknowledged, that would be great too. All right,
Mr. Chairman, most of them are going door to door.
thank you. All right,
Okay, briefly, and I know Ms. Haas wants to speak, but I don't know if we can.
go ahead, Adam. We're just,
Okay,
we're
briefly. The purpose of background checks is not to prosecute, but to stop the purchase of people, from people who are, to stop guns from falling into the wrong hands. There's no scientific evidence of these particular numbers for false positives. Public health research shows the contrary. Senator Sturvell provided me with some evidence from the Journal of Preventive Medicine and the Lancet, and whether it's 2.5 million that were stopped or 3 million isn't what matters. And I would say there's a range of information when you go through a background check, whether it's your driver's license number, full range of demographic information, and those that are delayed have to be resolved within 3 days or the purchase goes through. And, 3 days is not too long to wait for that smaller percentage to save lives. So I hope the committee will report the bill.
all right, thank you very much. The motion before us is to report Senate Bill 5 as amended, which has already been rolled together with 412, 432, 145, and 447. This is to report. Clerk will open the roll.
Ayes 6, noes 9.
All right, the bill fails to report. Thank you. All right, we are going to roll through these bills now at hopefully a little bit accelerated pace. Senator Eben, do you have another bill?
Yes, sir. I have 2 more. And the one that, if you could just give me a little bit more time, because I have an important witness, is bump stocks. This would prohibit the manufacture, import, sale, possession, or transfer or transportation of a device that increases the rate of fire of a semi-automatic firearm, whether bump stocks, trigger cranks, or...
Excuse me, Mr. Chairman, what bill number are we talking about?
I'm sorry, this is Senate Bill number 1.
Thank you.
The violation would be punishable as a Class 1 misdemeanor. And Virginia doesn't prohibit these devices now that are easily accessible online, starting at $200. We all are familiar with the horrible tragedy in Las Vegas as well. Some of you may have heard of the shooter in 1993 who used similar device to
wanna
kill
see
8
that?
people and wound 6 others in San Francisco. And this does not impact the federal law already addressing machine guns. So I just hope that even though there may not have been a similar tragedy, or there has not been in Virginia yet, that we don't wait for one to occur to adopt this. This is the I hope no one in the committee is in favor of bump stocks.
Mr. Chair? All right. We've got Senate Bill 1, 113, and 676. And I don't know whether Senator Favola and Senator Deeds want to say anything. Senator Favola?
Mr. Chair, substitute was distributed.
Oh, it was?
Yeah, the substitute just makes the language.
It was, wasn't it?
So
All
I
right,
would
is there a motion to adopt the
move the
substitute?
substitute.
It's been moved and seconded. All in favor of adopting the substitute signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed. Substitutes before us. Thank you very much. I'm sorry.
I'm happy to have mine rolled into Senator Evans. Mine's
Okay.
113.
All right. Anybody have any, Senator Deeds?
Mr. Chair, I was just going to, it's been illegal for a long time to possess a machine gun without a federal permit. And this bill simply makes also illegal the manufacture or possession of a device that will turn an otherwise legal weapon into an illegal weapon. And to me, it's a no-brainer, but that's what the bill does.
All right, thank you very much. Let's hear from supporters of the bill first. We've got 3 minutes.
If we could hear from Ms. Courtney Carroll.
You all step right up. Yes, ma'am.
Thank
Welcome.
you. I am a Route 91 survivor. If you'd asked my friends before September what words would use to describe me, and it would be fun-loving, energetic, fearless, spontaneous, bubbly. All that changed the night of October 1st. Country music concerts were my happy place. On October 1st, my aunt and I were singing along to Jason Aldean when the first shots rang out. I mentioned the sound, and everyone around me assured me it was fireworks. Seconds later, what sounded like machine gun fire that you'd only hear in movies began. We immediately crouched down. You see, we were packed in that venue of 22,000 people. As I laid crouched down, covered by people, I kept thinking, this couldn't happen. This couldn't happen to me. Not now. I prayed, and I prayed for my safe return to my 2 children. The sounds of that night haunt me daily. The screams, the crying, the people yelling. After 5 rounds of shooting, we got up and we ran. We spent the next minutes running for our lives, hiding behind cars, taking cover as he reloaded. We hit a dead end and we dove for the ground. At this moment, my aunt yelled out that she had been hit. She was grazed by a bullet above the eye. I can't even describe to you the horror of looking at my aunt with blood dripping down her face. To describe the horror of that night, just imagine the sounds of bullets ricocheting off the stage, off the ground, everywhere. Seeing people shot, bleeding out, and murdered. And our night didn't end there. We had no idea where my uncle or my boyfriend were. We took cover in a random building and we hid in a bathroom floor of a men's urinal for 5 hours as reports of extra shooters coming out all over Las Vegas. That horrible night, we lost 58 and over 500 were injured. That horrid monster that shot at us from his room on the 32nd floor of the Mandalay Bay Hotel fired using a bump stock equipped weapons, allowing him to change a semi-automatic rifle into essentially a machine gun. If bump stocks were banned, I truly believe we would have not lost so many that night. We would have had time to run and hide. We would have time to take cover. He wouldn't have been able to fire 1,100 rounds in minutes. Since that night, I barely leave my home. I suffer from PTSD. We were untrained in a war zone. I struggle with anxiety, depression. Every time I enter a building, I look for exits, and I wonder where I would hide if a shooter were to enter. Do you know what it's like to live in fear 24/7? Because I do, and thousands of others do. I can't be in crowds. I jump at every loud noise. And I'm one of the lucky ones. Others are paralyzed, they're blind, and living with bullets in their body. Something that may surprise you is I'm a Republican. I vote in every election. I grew up around hunters. I can still remember when my dad hid his rifle. And my boyfriend of 3 years is not only a hunter, but just purchased his first handgun. I am all for gun rights if used properly. I've asked him and I've asked other hunters if there's a need for bump stocks to be used in hunting. The answer is always an immediate no. Committee members, I'm asking you to think of my story. 200 mass shootings happen yearly in the U.S. There is no reason why we need to make this easier for these killers to murder more innocent people. I beseech you to pass this bill and ban bump stocks. I assure you that just like you are probably thinking, this will never happen to me. Well, it can. And not if you can't think of yourself, think of your children, your family, and your friends. What was supposed to be a night of fun and singing and meeting new people turned into the worst mass shooting in modern history. Please don't allow this to happen again.
Thank you for
Thank
coming.
you.
And thank you for sharing your moving story. Thank you. All right. We'll hear from those who wish to speak in opposition.
Philip Van Cleve, president of VCDL. I think you guys, some of the emails you got from constituents that we gave some of the information to them has a link to some videos. One is a video of me bump firing a gun with just my bare hands. It doesn't require the stock. It's easy to do, and I explain in there how it's done, and I actually do it. There's also a video side by side of somebody with a bump stock and somebody that just pulling the trigger as fast as they can. It was a virtual dead heat. So they're really, the bump stock does not speed the gun up other than what you could do if you knew how to handle the gun. So we oppose this. Besides, the language is vague. Anything that could quote unquote speed the gun up. So if you had a red dot sight, you could get on sight quicker. That would be speeding the gun up. If the trigger was a little bit lighter, that it goes on and on. So we oppose. Thank you.
Whoa, Mr. Chairman.
Senator Sasslaw.
So you're telling me that somebody who pulls the trigger one at a time can fire as fast as a 30 caliber or 50 caliber machine gun?
No, that's a machine gun. The machine guns go faster than bump stocks. Absolutely, it's a whole different design.
Well, what, Mr. Chairman?
Senator Sasslaw.
What's the problem of banning a bump stock when its only possible use is to accelerate the firing of that gun to where you almost have an automatic weapon? What's the good that comes from allowing bump stocks to be sold in your world?
They're fun to shoot. I've shot bump fire. It's a lot of fun to do.
Can I tell you something?
Yeah.
So are 30 and 50 caliber machine guns. So are 155 howitzers.
True.
So are bazookas. So are flamethrowers. I've fired them all, okay? But that doesn't mean that the general citizens should be allowed to handle those weapons.
We've had one
right.
case.
Hang on. We're not going to have a running debate with witnesses. All right.
Worst mass shooting in our history.
Erin Loop with the National Rifle Association. We ask you to oppose these bills. We currently oppose any state legislation putting a ban on these bump stock fire devices. The Obama administration twice approved the sale of bump stocks. The NRA has asked ATF to review whether or not these devices currently comply with federal law, and we have not yet received a decision. So we ask you today to oppose these.
All right. Thank you very much. Anybody else feel compelled to step up and say anything?
Mr. Chairman, Bob Sadler, South Richmond. If this bill simply banned devices that simulated automatic fire, I might be in a tough spot, but that's not what this bill does. What it says is any mechanical device. Now, I looked at my rifles, buttstock to muzzle, and between ergonomics, technology, I could only find one thing that did not have potential to increase the rate of fire, and that was the bayonet lug. Everything else on my rifles, some of my handguns, the argument can easily be made that because it brings you back on target quicker, because it helps you find your sight picture quicker, it can bring you back on target quicker, it increases your rate of fire.
Thank you.
It's overreaching. Thank you.
All right.
Mr. Chair.
Senator Stewart.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to ask counsel, in looking at this language, and I understand what the purpose of the bill is, Adam, and I think I probably support your purpose. But I'd ask counsel, is this vague such that, I mean, if you oil your trigger, are you guilty of this? I don't know. I'm curious. Substituted.
Mr. Chairman, Senator,
To make the trigger go quicker?
no, because oil on a trigger would not be a part or a combination of parts.
Mr. Chairman.
How about a new trigger, Mr. Chairman?
Mr. Chairman.
Hang on one second.
If a trigger were designed that had the effect of increasing the rate of fire, and there are devices that sit behind the trigger that serve the same, function in the same manner as bump stock devices, then yes, that would be prohibited by this statute.
Steve, how about if you've got a factory-installed trigger with 6 pounds of resistance, and you want to take that factory-installed trigger out and put in one with 4 pounds of resistance, would that violate this law?
Yep. Sure would.
Yes.
Yes.
You know, and the committee is going to do its will, but I do know that there is a pending, there's pending legislation in Congress and an inquiry with the Department of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms that is awaiting an answer as to whether these are already illegal under federal law. So, you know, I don't know what the will of the committee is, but it just would seem to me that would make a lot of sense to let ATF clarify this issue and to avoid some of the unintended consequences that I think a lot of us share the goal, but I'm just concerned about whether this addresses it.
Mr. Chairman, you may have a solution here. Suppose you strike any part or combination of parts, so it would read sell, offer for sale, or transfer in the Commonwealth, and you would strike including a trigger crank or a bump fire device. That would seem to me that that would take care of that problem because you would narrow it now to just 2 devices.
Mr. Chairman, I think that these category of devices are broadly described as trigger activators, if that phrasing assists the committee. For example, there's now being marketed some type of mechanical glove that a wearer can use to increase the rate of fire. And so as soon as you outlaw cranks or bump stocks, there will be another device that does the same thing. If you use the broader term trigger activator, then I think that's as close as you can come to what the patron intends to do without worrying about triggers with easier pull.
Is that a defined term somewhere?
I don't know that it is a defined term, but from my reading, as casual as it has been, that seems to be the phrase that describes all of these various devices.
Senator Norman.
Mr. Chairman, I have a motion to report the bill and re-refer it to the Committee on Finance.
Second.
There's been a motion, and to be clear, this would be to roll together Senate bills. Let's address this first. Is there a motion to roll together Senate bills 1, 113, and 676 into Senate Bill 1, and for the patrons to be listed as co-chief patrons?
Mr. Chairman.
Is there a motion to that effect first?
Mr. Chairman, before we get there, parliamentary inquiry about the status of the bill. There seemed to be from
Senator Saslaw, an amendment. Was that amendment, other than talked about, ever offered
It was
or
not.
seconded? Okay. Thank you.
I'd be prepared to offer it if, it's the will of the committee.
I'll withdraw my motion to report and re-refer.
All right, Senator Saslaw has
The
made his,
There would be, you would strike transport in the Commonwealth, and you would strike any part or combination of parts, including.
so the bill would read,
Mr. Chair.
transfer or transport in the Commonwealth a trigger crank or bump fire device.
That is designed to increase the rate of fire of a semi-automatic rifle.
All right, Senator Deeds.
My concern about that is that you just come up with some device that's not known as a trigger crank or bump fire device. And I think Mr. Benjamin's suggestion that you replace that language, any part or combination of parts, with trigger activator, including, and then send it to finance. And if you can figure it out there, if there are.
I don't have a problem with that.
That's not a term of art.
All right, your motion is trigger activator.
Trigger activator, including a trigger crank or bump fire. Strike the language, any part or combination of parts.
All right. That it? Okay.
I think that.
Got it, Charles? I got it. All right. Motion to amend is before us. All in favor of the motion to amend signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed? All right. The amendment is adopted. Senator Norman.
Mr. Chairman, I would move again to report Senate Bill 1 with rolling Senate Bill 113 and 676 into it and re-referring it to the Committee on Finance.
Second.
All right. Motion has been made and seconded.
Mr. Chairman, just
real quick.
could you ask the people who are here to support the bill to stand?
Yes, sure. Go right ahead. Thank you very much. All right.
Opposed?
Open the roll. All right.
Ayes 11, noes 4.
All right. Bill is reported and re-referred to the Committee on Finance. Thank you very much. And next, we're going to move to, oh, you have one more bill?
Yes, sir. Senate Bill number 2, which the committee heard a version that I've tried to answer objections from 2017 with this bill. Makes it a misdemeanor to carry a loaded firearm while under the influence of alcohol or illegal drugs. This is, again, with a Class 1 misdemeanor. It's already illegal to be under the influence while carrying a concealed handgun. This just applies to all firearms, and it just closes that loophole. And I would point out that there was a bill from Senator McEachin in 2011. It was stronger than this, but it passed the Senate 40-0. Senators McDougal, Newman, Norman, Obenshain, Stanley Stewart, and all the Democrats on this committee all favored that measure. And I can answer questions, but we're really just amending an existing statute to extend reasonable use restrictions to those who are at an elevated risk to do harm to themselves and others with the involvement of alcohol. And the NRA has said in its gun safety rules, never use alcohol or over-the-counter prescription or other drugs before or while shooting. Alcohol, as well as any other substance likely to impair normal mental or physical bodily functions, must not be used before or while handling or shooting guns. While this is not as strong as the NRA's recommendation, I ask that you adopt it nonetheless. It's a safety issue, not a Second Amendment issue. And further, alcohol leads to impaired judgment about whether to shoot a gun, as well as impaired aim when firing. 42% of homicide offenders were under the influence at the time of a homicide. Drugs and alcohol are strongly linked with fatal and non-fatal domestic violence, youth violence, incarceration for violent crimes, suicide, and suicide attempts. I hope that you'll recognize that. And this is not a new concept. Missouri, Oklahoma, South Carolina, Tennessee, and Texas prohibit possession while intoxicated. And Georgia and Florida have stronger laws or similar laws. South Carolina goes even further. You can would prohibit possession even while consuming alcohol. This is only while under the influence.
All right, thank you very much. Anybody wish to speak in favor of this bill? Step right up.
Hi, Josh Horowitz, Educational Fund, Stop Gun Violence. Thank you for your time. The data about alcohol and violence is getting stronger and stronger every day. Alcohol plays a very strong role in violence, including gun violence, and there's a lot of emerging research on that, so I urge you to support this bill.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, Andrew Goddard, Virginia Center for Public Safety. My membership and board would like to register their support for this bill.
Thank you.
Lori Haas with the Educational Fund to Stop Gun Violence, and we support the bill. Thank you.
Thank you.
Pam Pouchot, Peninsula Indivisible, representing over 100 members. We support this bill.
Thank you. Anybody else? Anybody wish to speak in opposition to the bill? All right. Let me ask a quick question of council. Let me, so the bill on lines 18 through 19 refers to having a loaded firearm on or about his person. So let's just say somebody is going into a restaurant serving alcohol, intending to drink alcohol, has a firearm, has a concealed carry permit, places that firearm in glove compartment, locks it, comes back to his car, has a designated driver, gets in the passenger seat with the firearm, a foot in front of him. Does that raise implications, or would that implicate that person?
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
So that person who tried to stow his firearm would be in violation of this statute?
Yes.
All right. Thank you. Any other questions? All right, Senator Stewart.
Senator Evan, I think I asked you this before, but shouldn't you at least have some section in here that talks about under the influence to a degree that impaired your ability to safely possess it or something?
No.
Couldn't you, in fact, take a dose of cough syrup if it had alcohol in it? You'd be guilty
No,
under
it
this?
said illegal drugs. Cough syrup's legal. But further, in answer to Senator Obenshain's question.
Doesn't some cough syrup have alcohol in it?
It
It doesn't say illegal alcohol.
If you have cough syrup and you want to put the bullets in the glove compartment or take the bullets and put them in your pocket separately, you'll be okay. If you can walk and not be impaired with a normal dose of cough syrup, you'll be okay. I've never heard of cough syrup. It's violating the orders on the instructions on the bottle if you're under the influence from a dose of cough syrup.
Senator Stewart.
Is that your intent? Isn't
Did you have cough syrup?
your intent for people who are intoxicated not to carry them?
Right, and I would say that that's my intent. And if you want to put a cough syrup amendment in there, that's fine. But I think that under the influence.
I actually was trying to help you, but that's okay.
Well, seriously, if you want to help me with an amendment, I'd be happy to accept it. But I don't think that's not my intent, sir, Senator. Further, in answer to Senator Obenshain's point, I would just say if you have that problem with the glove box, just take the bullets out before you get drunk, or have the driver do that for you if you can't safely do that. That would be my answer. But Senator Stewart, I didn't mean that to be disrespectful, but if you have an amendment to answer that issue, I'd be happy to accept it.
All right.
Mr. Chairman.
Senator Stewart.
It just seems to me that what you have here is not, I find difficulty with that language, because I think you would have you could collect a lot of people under that you didn't intend to collect under. What was all.
Yeah.
Maybe Steve can help with that, but.
On that .08.
Mr. Chairman, Senator Stewart, when the statute includes the phrase "under the influence," it has the same meaning as the DUI statutes. Last year, the bill that was presented to the committee used the word intoxicated as defined in 4.1-100, and the committee elected to switch out the language to under the influence. I'm not aware of a distinction, although there may have been some discussion about a distinction last year. The Virginia cases I have found describe under the influence by referring to the definition of intoxicated. The statutory definition of intoxicated means a condition in which a person has drunk enough alcoholic beverages to observably affect his manner, disposition, speech, muscular movement, general appearance, or behavior. I think the bill is fine as it is and is consistent with the patron's intent, but you could also switch and use intoxicated as defined by 4.1-100.
Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Chairman.
Senator Stewart and Senator Peake.
Steve, you are much more of an expert in this field than I am, but does the DUI statute say something about your ability impaired, you were impaired to a degree which you can't operate a vehicle safely or something like that when you talk about under the influence?
I don't think so, but we're going to check.
And if I might, I think what might solve that is on lines 18 and 21, I would draw your attention to the phrase illegal drugs. So if you have a prescription or a cough syrup is legal, then I don't think it would be swept into that.
I'm not sure. How about if your marijuana decriminalization passes?
Marijuana would still be illegal under decrim.
Mr. Chairman, if I could return to, I think it was Senator Stewart's question. The DUI statute has several subsections that deal with prohibited driving. The second alcohol one prohibits driving while such person is under the influence of alcohol, period. The next section deals with a person who is under the influence of a narcotic drug, and it is in that subsection, where they speak of to a degree which impairs his ability to drive or operate a motor vehicle.
So there's some defining.
There is for self-administered medication, but for alcohol, it's simply under the influence of alcohol.
All right. Senator Peake.
Yes, Mr. Chairman. And Senator Evans, I appreciate and understand what you're trying to do here, but my problem, Mr. Chairman, with the bill, and having defended a number of DUI cases and drunken public cases, is it comes down to the subjective testimony of one person, most likely, whether you're under the influence. In DUI situations now, we have a .08. You can scientifically prove that. And in this situation, you cannot. It is so subjective, and that is my problem with the bill as it stands.
All right. Bill's before us.
If the senator wants to offer an amendment, I would be happy to take it. But I really did try and answer all the issues from last year. I know you weren't here when this was considered in 2011, but it was unanimous vote for those who were.
Mr. President.
Well, thank you for the promotion.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir.
I just want to make 2 quick points. One is we have people that refuse to take the DUI test all the time. In other words, they refuse to take the breathalyzer, and we still convict them. So there is objective criteria by which you can find somebody intoxicated, not just breathalyzer. Secondly, there is federal law on felon in possession, which all the time people are picked up with a firearm in their house, in their car, and it becomes a question of fact as to whether or not they had possession of it. And that's something that is routinely given to a jury. I have both won and lost those cases. So this idea that somebody might put it in their glove box and have it locked up and get convicted anyway, if so, they should probably sue their lawyer for malpractice because they have very poor legal representation. So the bottom line is all these issues are solvable. This is what a criminal statute does. We have lawyers that battle this out. I think this is a good law, and I would move to report it.
Second. All right, it's been moved and seconded the bill be reported. Clerk will open the roll. Whoops. Just got McDougal's. All right.
Ayes 6, noes 9.
Bill fails to report. Thank you very much. All right, next we're going to go through the patron sign-up. Senator Chase.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman and fellow senators.
What's your bill number,
I will
Senator
be
Chase?
presenting Senate Bill 715, carrying a concealed handgun for firefighters and emergency medical services.
We have a is there, do you have a substitute for that?
Yes, I do have substitute, and I also have some letters of support for some EMS in my county, in Amelia County and Colonial Heights, in support of this bill.
All right.
And I would
Let's
ask that
see
they
if
be
we can
passed out as well.
circulate the substitute. Thank you. Senator Saslaw moves and Senator Stanley seconds the adoption of the substitute. All in favor of adopting the substitute indicate by saying aye. Aye. All opposed. Substitutes before us. Yes, ma'am. Go right ahead.
All right. Basically, what Senate Bill 715 does is allow our firefighters and our EMS to conceal carry while they're in the line of duty, given a couple different restrictions. What we have done to this bill, it's been amended. The former language said that they could do so without a permit. I've changed that to include a concealed weapon permit. I've also taken out the requirement that they're prior law enforcement or military. I've included an amendment that would basically require the EMS staffer or firefighter to follow the written policy as outlined by the fire or EMS chief.
All right. So the substitute that is before us actually does still have the language dealing with military and law enforcement in it.
So I'm offering another amendment to take that part out.
If we were to do that, you have that language, Charles? Or what we would do? All right. So you want to remove the language that would authorize a former law enforcement or military, just carte blanche to carry. Is that right?
For any valid carrying concealed weapon permit holder.
All right. So it would be limited to any valid concealed weapon permit holder.
And they must have the permission from their
And permission.
fire, yes,
All right.
fire chief.
All right. Somebody want to offer that amendment, removing military and law enforcement limitations? So somebody does want to offer that. Okay. It's been moved and seconded. All in favor of that amendment signify by saying aye. All opposed? All right, passes 2-1. Okay.
Okay. So do you also have in that amendment before you, I just want to make sure that there is an amendment in there that would require the concealed weapon permit holder to follow written policy as outlined by the fire or EMS chief.
All right. So, and I think that one issue that you and I discussed this morning and is this allows, I mean, if you're a member of a squad and permitted under this to carry, this would permit the firefighter or person employed as an emergency medical services provider to carry a concealed handgun wherever they may travel in the Commonwealth. So would that, and our council is engaged in discussions right now, but would that apply to courthouse carry or other prohibited areas? Charles, do you have any thoughts on the subject?
It would, Mr. Chairman.
So it would trump other provisions. So even a concealed carry permit holder, a person under this would be able to carry where no other concealed carry permit holder could carry.
That's correct, Mr. Chairman.
Is that what your intention was?
I'm agreeable to whatever this committee decides on that. I guess I would throw this out there. My daughter is an EMT, and they go in, if there's an emergency, they're gonna go wherever the emergency is. So I would take that into consideration.
Would you object to maybe a friendly amendment that would limit it to while engaged in the performance of their,
While on duty,
while on duty? Would you object to that?
I would not object to that.
All right. Is there a motion to that effect? It's been moved and seconded to amend. You have that in concept, Charles?
I do, Mr. Chairman.
All right. All in favor of that amendment signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed? All right. With that amendment, you have a question, Senator Stewart?
Well, I was just curious, doesn't that doesn't necessarily accomplish what you were trying to do? Wouldn't it better serve to say while they were employing services or performing services? Isn't that where you wanted to go with it? You still could carry, if you were on duty, you could carry in places that nobody else could, like a courthouse. I mean, just as an example, but if they were administering services, and I know where you're going with this. I was a Commonwealth's attorney. I understand that they go into some scary
Correct.
places at night late and things like that.
Correct.
And I think that's what you want to do. But maybe you want to leave it as is. It just seems to me it'd be better to say while they're administering services or something like that.
Mr. Chairman.
Well, if you want to reconsider.
Mr. Chairman.
I didn't vote for it.
All right, Senator Edwards.
Doesn't it say wherever such firefighter or person employed as emergency medical services personnel may travel, wherever you may travel? And I read that as an official capacity.
Well, it is now.
Okay. Yeah.
With that last amendment.
Right.
I think it just better clarifies
Okay.
the intention.
All right, any other questions? Let's hear from people who wish to speak in support of the bill.
And I do have a couple letters in front of you, one from Colonial Heights Chief of Fire and EMS, A.G. Moore Jr., who is in support of the bill. Also, you have a letter in front of you who's in support of the bill, Amelia County Volunteer Fire Department, Company 1 Fire Chief Justin Wargo.
Thank you.
All right. And then I also have here, speaking in favor of the bill, Amelia Emergency Squad President Kim Smalley, who's here in person today.
We took out that
And
law enforcement.
you see you in person.
All right, go ahead.
All right, I have several points to make, so I'm going to speak fast. Again, Kim Smalley, I am the president of the Amelia Emergency Squad. I am also a firefighter, member of Company 3 out of Jetersville. I am also the county EMS officer for Amelia County Volunteer Fire Department. The situation, what the need is, in Amelia County, we're a fairly large county distance-wise. There's very often, we have one deputy on duty. And we get more and more calls. We run over in excess of 1,600 calls per year for EMS and several, well, probably close to 1,000 calls fire. Very often, when we arrive, we're seeing people at their worst. We're seeing them in situations that are very stressful for them and their family members. I've personally witnessed situations that unexpectedly go south, so to speak, just from the sheer emotion of the situation that the family is in. Law enforcement may or may not be there. And I've got plenty of personal stories I'd be happy to share with you if any of you, want to take the time to talk about it. But all in all, there are times that I have been, and squad members have been, in fear of great bodily harm from situations that we've been in trying to provide emergency medical care or fire protection, property protection to homeowners. And something that kind of strikes me as totally counterintuitive is we're the good guys. We're the people that the public calls when they're in trouble. We are the people that are trained to keep our cool in very crazy situations. You know, we're the people that run to danger. I mean, how many people in their right minds run into a house that's on fire?
Mr. Chair,
You know,
Mr. Chair,
Yeah.
I hate to interrupt. Could I ask you a question, ma'am?
yes, sir.
As part of your training to become an EMT or a firefighter, do you go through any weapons training?
Actually, I'm glad you brought that up because that was one of my points I was going to make. I don't know how many of you are aware of the training that is available through FEMA and that we have had in Amelia County as part of grants. There's active threat integration, integrated response training, in which firefighters, EMS, and law enforcement all went through together, sponsored by FEMA. In fact, I have 2 sets of ballistic gear in our squad house that's in a place accessible so that if we have an active shooter event, our EMS folks are expected to go in with law enforcement to provide treatment to people who are injured, even if there's an active shooter on scene. There's a lot of other training. I've personally been through 3 different active shooter type courses. The other thing that gets me is to be a firefighter EMS personnel, you have to go through a federal background check or you don't do the job.
All right. Senator Sasslaw.
We're trusted with millions of dollars worth of equipment.
Hang on one second. Senator Sasslaw.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, if you said that you go in, there's an active shooter,
Mm-hmm.
and the police aren't there?
Well, police are there, yes, sir.
Well, and they need
We go
you to,
in-
they
we
need
go
you
in
to.
with them.
They need you to help shoot the bad guy? Is that what you're telling me?
I have been through some training in which I actually put the cuffs on the trainee, the suspect. I was part of the group, yes, sir. Now, I did not have a weapon, no,
Have
sir.
you ever done that
In real
in an
life?
actual situation where you were, with the cops were there and you put the handcuffs on them?
No, we have not had an active shooter situation arise in Amelia County at this time.
Okay.
But it goes back, we're trusted with people's lives. And when I say lives, I mean their most valuable property to them, their health, their, quote, secrets. In other words, very intimate information that we gather on scene that we, or things that we see. We're given access to controlled medications to use for patients. Tools, you know, a fire truck is $500,000 or more. But anyway, the thing that we are not trusted with.
I hate to do it,
Yeah.
but
Okay,
our
no, I was
time
going
is
to
up.
say, the only thing we're not trusted with is a means to protect ourselves.
All right.
Done.
Anybody else want to register their support for this bill? That's it.
Philip Van Cleve, VCDL, we strongly support.
Thank you. Anybody else? Yes, sir.
Mr. Chairman, Ed Rhodes, Virginia Association of Rescue Squads. With the amendments, we support it, but we'll still be working with the senator to improve it.
Thank you. All right. Yes, sir.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, Kevin Carroll, President for Fraternal Police. We support the legislation. Thank you.
All right. Well, good. All right. Anybody wish to speak in opposition to this piece of legislation?
Just one question.
Senator Sasslaw, one question.
Does this create potential liability for these local governments? No. When one of these people starts opening fire who aren't trained the way a policeman is?
Can I answer to that?
Yeah, go right ahead.
I need it from somebody with a law degree
Sure.
in front of their name.
I know just enough to be dangerous.
Yeah, I can
And
answer.
Mr.
I got a
Speaker.
law degree.
Mr. Chairman.
You know, anything that a rescue squad member does or fire department member does has the potential to expose the department, the agency, or the locality, depending on how they're organized, to liability. That's why they all have liability insurance.
All
right.
Mr. Chairman?
Senator Peake.
Question. Does this bill, can each locality still decide whether or not their members
Absolutely.
can carry firearms? So if a locality does not want to take that chance, they can say no firearms.
It is up to the fire chief or EMS.
Thank you.
All right. Well, it's up to the agency and
Mr. Chair.
Senator Stewart.
Senator Chase, should this be a local option for the counties that want to Senator Saslaw's point, I'm thinking Fairfax County really isn't interested in this.
Sure, that is a local option.
But I can see where your counties would be, my counties would be probably.
Right. It
But
really is
others-
an option in there that would allow by county,
But it's
each
not.
fire and EMS chief to decide that.
It's
So-
by the EMS chief.
or emergency medical services chief. It's, there should be an amendment that says, and follows written policy as outlined by the chief.
Well, and we can further amend it. I would point out, though, that all fire companies and departments and rescue squads and agencies are not the same. So some in Fairfax, for example, that is a 100% governmental-run department and agency. In my part of the world, they are, private, not-for-profits that do have chiefs. And if the Rockingham County or Shenandoah County government made a policy, it wouldn't be binding on or wouldn't have any impact. So I think what the patron is doing is trying to give that local option as best you can, given the structure of these agencies. So,
Can you speak to that?
I'm
Mr. Chairman,
sorry.
in speaking to your comment, it's my understanding that should this bill pass in whichever form, that the Office of EMS and the EMS Advisory Board is going to have to come up with some regulations to work this into it.
I don't think that's in here, is it?
No, it's not in there.
Charles? All right, I tell you what, we're going to pass this by temporarily. Okay, I want to deal with it today.
Okay.
But unless there's an objection, we're going to pass it by temporarily so you can address those local and whatever, the advisory board regs. Also, make sure you address volunteers, okay? All right, this will go by temporarily. We're coming back to you, so
Do you want the next bill
work
that I
hard,
have?
real quick. Senator
Do you want-
Chase, we also have Senate Bill 716.
716, yes.
Which I believe needs to be re-referred.
Okay.
You were talking about background checks of all kinds, I believe.
Yes.
Right, including for daycare agencies,
Yes.
the works. I believe this needs to be re-referred to the Committee on Rehabilitation and Social Services.
Mr. Chairman, before you refer it, could I offer an amendment?
No.
No?
If it's going to be re-referred, we're going to do the work over there.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman is down at the end of the dais here. Is there a motion to re-refer to Committee on Rehabilitation? It's been moved and seconded. All in favor, signify by saying aye. All opposed, it's re-referred to the committee. That was, all right, next we have Senator Favola, and I'm sorry for your wait. Senator Favola, what bill do you have next?
Well, I was going to do my firearm bills first and then do.
Yeah, that'd be good, and we may not get to your other one yet today.
The child support arrears.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll make that last. Mr. Chairman, on Senate Bill 63, I'm happy to roll mine into Senate Bill 360.
Let's get rid of that.
Senator McClellan is carrying an
Which bill?
administration. Senate Bill 63, I'll roll it into Senate Bill 360. Senator McClellan is carrying the administration's bill, so I'm happy to do that.
63 and 760?
360.
360.
Yeah.
All right, Senator Howe moves and Senator Lucas seconds to roll these together, 63 and 360. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed. Those are rolled together with the two of you as chief co-patrons. Go ahead.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to move now to reporting lost or stolen firearms. Did you want to?
I'm sorry. Oh, so we're going to come back to that. Why don't we do it now?
Okay, you want to do it now? Sure.
Yeah. Since you're both here.
Good morning, Mr. Chair.
Good morning.
So Senate Bill 360 is the bill that would allow local governments to prohibit the possession or carrying of firearms, ammunition, and component parts in public spaces during a permitted event or an event that should be permitted under the local ordinances. This is a bill that came out of the after action review that after the Charlottesville events of April 12th, resulting from Executive Order 68, the Governor's Task Force on Public Safety Preparedness in Response to Civil Unrest. What we are seeing, and Secretary Moran is here and can go into more details on what they saw, but let me tell you what I saw personally in the city of Richmond, which a month after the Unite the Right rally in Charlottesville, there was a smaller rally on Monument Avenue. I live literally around the corner from the statue of Robert E. Lee. As you know, Robert E. Lee is state property. And so on the circle where Robert E. Lee, the statue itself sits, the Commonwealth can prohibit the carrying of firearms during permitted events or can prohibit any events at all. And that's what happened that day. As you recall, there was a suspension of any permitted events pending a review of the guidelines surrounding such permits. But when the Confederate States of America II came to Richmond, they did their demonstrations around the General Lee statue. That's city property. And so if you have a rally or a demonstration on Monument Avenue, which is in the middle of a residential street, a highly trafficked residential street with houses literally around the corner, a daycare, my daughter's daycare, a church, my house literally around the corner, you can have weapons banned in one place, but not across the street. What we are seeing is the events of Charlottesville show a new brand of protest where firearms are prevalent, where firearms can and in some cases were used. One thing Secretary Moran told me that I had not realized, firearms were discharged in Charlottesville. We are lucky no one was hit. I can speak from personal experience that on the day of the rally in Richmond, I had to keep my children away from the windows because I didn't know if Richmond was going to turn into Charlottesville. That is not a free exercise of speech. That borders on terrorism. And so I think if we are going to allow the Commonwealth to ban weapons for permitted events, localities should have that same right, particularly when those events are in the same place. And with that, I'd like to have Secretary Moran come up and speak.
Okay, Secretary Moran, come on and speak to it.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, Brian Moran, Secretary of Public Safety and Homeland Security, and I think Senator McCullen has articulated the purposes of this bill very, very well. This is limited to permanent events. We want to encourage localities to adopt rigorous permitted conditions to regulate the marches and demonstrations, similar to what we saw in Charlottesville and Richmond. This bill would give permissive authority to localities to ban firearms at permitted events. So it is limited in nature. Now, why is that necessary? What we saw in Charlottesville is depicted on this photograph, again, Asif Bhavnagri is kind enough to hold it up. We saw two instances there. Well, at least two instances are depicted on here. One of which is open carry of military-style assault weapons, which chilled individuals' First Amendment rights. There were numerous people there in Charlottesville to protest against the hate speech that was taking place at Emancipation Park. Many people saw these firearms and left the site because these are very intimidating weapons. Second and above, we see an individual actually firing a handgun. He had been carrying that concealed during the demonstration. And then, again, he's at Emancipation Park and actually discharged the firearm in the direction of another individual. We are extremely fortunate that that did not escalate beyond that firearm. And he is being prosecuted for that offense.
Senator Stanley.
Secretary Moran, let me just ask you this, though. In my understanding, and maybe I'm wrong, and maybe it's even depicted in the upper photo, that was the incident involving where someone was using an aerosol can and a lighter as a flamethrower about at the same time. Isn't that right?
That is correct. In fact, the
Okay.
flamethrower, but that was directed at
Okay.
yes.
Okay. So, and Mr. Chairman, that would be considered a dangerous weapon as well, wouldn't it?
He is being prosecuted as well.
Right. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you. I
should-
just want to make sure of that.
Yeah,
Thank you.
absolutely. Now, I want to say in terms of the task force, we spent a lot of time on the issues around Charlottesville and its aftermath. I want to thank Senator Bryce Reeves. He was on the task force, as well as the former chair of the Militia and Police Public Safety Committee, Scott Lingenfelter. And we came up with a number of recommendations. This is one, so that we can provide localities ability to regulate these events that can very much, as we saw in Charlottesville, turn violent. I think this would give them the tools to do just that. And again, it's limited to permitted events. And I know Mr. Benjamin has taken a look at the language, and he is prepared to offer some language that I think Senator McClellan will adopt, and we are amenable to that language. I think it tightens it up, and would be amenable to that.
All right.
And I'm here to answer any questions you might have, and I think Senator McClellan again articulated the difference. Robert E. Lee Monument in Richmond, it was state property. We were able to ban firearms, yet no locality in the Commonwealth of Virginia is able to do the same, and they should be able to do the same.
All right.
Can I just add one thing real quick?
Yes, Senator McClellan.
Chief Durham from the city of Richmond wanted to be here to talk a little bit more about what happened in the city. He could not be here, but his deputy, Chief Drew, is here if you have any questions for him. I would make one comment in response to Senator Stanley's question. Here in the city, Chief Durham did ban all weapons except firearms. So for the permitted event here in Richmond, anybody coming with an aerosol can would have had that taken away when they went through the checkpoint.
Okay, so before we hear speakers in support of or in opposition to the bill, my understanding is that somebody may wish to propose an amendment.
Mr. Chairman, one of the problems with the current draft is that it permits a locality to adopt ordinances that prohibit possession of firearms during a permitted event without requiring that that be within any certain distance or near the event. So, for example, if there were an event on Monument Avenue, the city of Richmond could pass an ordinance prohibiting possession of a firearm in Southside, and that's clearly not what the patron or the administration intends. So, to try to tighten this up, on line 29, after the word thereof, you would strike the remaining language in that sentence and insert this language: on public property within a certain number of feet. I think the administration would suggest within 1,000 feet. That's used throughout the code. So again, it's on public property within 1,000 feet of a public assembly, demonstration, march, parade, protest, rally, or other similar event for which the locality has issued a permit or for which a permit is required by the ordinances of that locality. That's the first suggested amendment. The second amendment would borrow from Senate Bill 63, which provides for exceptions. And my understanding from the administration is that those exceptions would be as follows, picking up on line 38 from Senate Bill 63. Such an ordinance shall not apply to any law enforcement officer as defined in section 9.1-101, armed security officer as defined in 9.1-138, member of the armed forces of the United States, comma, member of the armed forces, reserves, or member of the National Guard acting in the performance of his lawful duties, period.
Not the remainder of that language, or to any person having a valid concealed handgun permit?
That is in Senate Bill 63, Mr. Chairman, but I did not understand the administration to be proposing that a concealed weapon permit holder be exempted.
Why not?
That's the administration, not me.
Well, it wasn't directed to you.
Well, we'd prefer not to have, regardless whether or not it's lawful or not, to have firearms at a demonstration. I think what we saw in Charlottesville you can exercise your First Amendment rights without carrying a firearm.
Well, let me ask counsel that First Amendment within 1,000 feet of a demonstration, march, parade, protest, rally, or other similar events? Is that basically the language that you?
It is.
So how do you determine where the 1,000 feet begins, ends? How about a parade? When does it stop being in a particular place? How do you determine the 1,000 feet? And how do you prevent it from affecting innocent bystanders, folks who, that concealed carry permit holder who just happens to be on the mall in Charlottesville or someplace else?
Mr. Chairman.
Let me ask Steve.
All right.
Mr. Chairman, you raise good logistical questions. If a parade is down Monument Avenue, then I think it will be fairly easy to determine 1,000 feet within the borders of that street or that sidewalk. If it's in a park.
While the parade is, it's a moving thing.
It is, but it's also permitted. And so the scope of that parade, the parameters and boundaries of that parade for which the permit permits it, that's going to be defined by the permit.
Mr. Chair, if I may.
Hang on a second, Steve.
We have, the same questions arise in other situations. For example, we have prohibited the possession of controlled substances within 1,000 feet of a school. A school obviously isn't a moving thing, but throughout the code, the best we have been able to do so far is to use a proximity, a measure.
I know where a school is, and I know I see the sign for the school. I see the entrance to the school. I know where its boundaries are. It's not going to move. It's not going to pop up tomorrow or next weekend or 2 weeks from now. But I may have no idea that there's a rally or demonstration. If I'm driving into a school property, I know I can't take a gun onto the school property, but I may not know I can't take that even a permitted event is taking place. And frankly, some of these permitted events are so darn small, you might walk into the middle of it and not know it is even taking place there.
Mr. Chairman, I think that the answer to the very valid question you raise is to require that any such ordinance have an intent or a knowing element to it. So you would permit a locality to pass an ordinance that prohibits the knowing possession, I'm sorry, not the knowing possession, but the possession.
Mr. Chair.
Mr. Chairman. I got it.
Mr. Chair.
Senator
I
Peterson,
feel-
Senator
Let me just make,
McDougal.
sometimes you have to make the obvious point. This is simply allowing an ordinance, okay? So trying to micromanage 500 feet or 375 feet is a little bit stupid, okay? Let the localities come up with situation-specific circumstances. We all know what's going on here, okay? The most simple statute in history was thou shalt not kill, okay? That was 4 words. Now, if some of us have been here, it may have been 1,000 words. But the bottom line is, let's just get to the point, and the ordinance can take care of these details.
Mr. Chairman, I do have a solution
Mr.
to your
Chairman.
problem.
Senator McDougal.
But the devil is in the details, Mr. Chairman, and if you were to pass this and there's a protest at the Richmond City Council building or Richmond City Hall, and people are on Capitol Square or in their General Assembly building, they would be in violation of the statute at any time they were in the building, that there was a prevented event at that location. So I do think it has a wider impact than what the senator indicates that it might have, and there can be some significant unintended consequences.
Senator McClellan.
Thank you. I do have a suggestion that I think will resolve this issue. As a practical matter, when you have these permitted events, the police department does set a perimeter around the permit zone. That's exactly what they did here in Richmond. That's exactly what happened with the inauguration this past weekend. So what you could do is, rather than just saying within 1,000 feet outright, saying within a designated perimeter established by the police department within, however many feet you want. And that way everybody is clear when you see the Jersey barrier or when you see the green bike racks, and that's where that's the designated area where you go through the checkpoint and then you can't take your
So
gun.
you're talking about within the perimeter?
Yes.
Okay. Do they all have perimeters?
I think if you put that in the statute, that it's within the designated perimeter zone, my guess is that they will, or it won't apply.
Okay. All right.
On both sides.
I think it's unworkable. All right.
Mr. Chairman, I just want to state the obvious. I understand Senator McClellan's thought process on that, but I think that makes it worse because there's nothing that prevents the ordinance from saying that the entire jurisdiction is the area that the permitted event is allowed to occur in. I mean, it could be limited, but it could be not limited, and we don't have any idea what that would be.
All right, let's cogitate over that for a minute. Let's hear speakers in support of this bill first. Go. And I think Richmond Police, I want to make sure you're heard too. Yes, ma'am.
Good morning, Mr. Chair and Senators. It's a pleasure to be here. My name's Kathy Galvin. I'm a resident of Charlottesville, Virginia. I'm also a Charlottesville City Councilor. I'm in support of the bill before you by Senators McClellan and Favola, and we will be also in support of a bill coming before you later on by Senator Deeds. Again, I am grateful to be here. It is an honor to be here, but it also is a duty and a necessity on my part to be here because I am a city councilor and I've taken an oath of office to protect my constituents, to protect the people of Charlottesville. I'm also there to protect and make sure that they have their Bill of Rights ensured. To further explain, let me please share with you briefly a glimpse of the morning of August 12th, 2017 in Charlottesville. That morning the air was tense. It was frightening. The streets of Charlottesville are small, narrow. The parks of Charlottesville are small. It's a very populated city. It was only a matter of time before a match would be struck that would have lit the tension of that air. That is what this bill speaks to. If there had at one point been a gunshot, fortunately no one was hurt. But if it had been a semi-automatic, the damage would have been that much greater. The show of force instills fear and negates our right to free speech and our right to free assembly. One right in our Bill of Rights, the right to bear arms, cannot be so misconstrued that it effectively cancels out to
Ms.
others
Galvin, I want to be
the right to free
respectful,
speech.
but your other speakers have a minute
Okay,
left.
thank you.
Thank you, and thank you for being here. We really, let me stop. Ms. Galvin, I'm not using the other speaker's time, but I do want to thank you for being here. Thank you for your advocacy, and my cutting you off, I really wasn't trying to be disrespectful, so I do appreciate
I did
it.
have the understanding that I was taking the time from other people. That's
You
why
are.
I,
That's all right.
okay,
Thank you.
I was completing my remarks. And
That's
the
that's
last thing
okay.
I'll say is that this is Martin Luther King Day, and the time is always right to do what is right, according to Mr. King. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Yes, sir.
Deputy Chief Steve Drew with the Richmond Police Department. I'm here with our Department Counsel, Dave Mitchell, and I would just again support this bill and a permitted event, an event that is pre-planned, that we know where it's going to be and know it's going to happen. We can use this, we can use this legislation and control those acts. On events that just pop up that we can't control, something that would show up at City Council or take to the streets of Richmond, we know we still have challenges there. But pre-planned, permanent events that we can get the message out that these are our barriers clearly defined. This is good legislation, and we support it with the Richmond Police Department.
Thank you very much.
My name is Robert McAdams. I'm a resident of Albemarle County. I live within the Charlottesville urban ring, and I'm representing the Charlottesville Center for Peace and Justice and the Charlottesville Coalition for Gun Violence Prevention. I have a statement here with copies to be distributed. We support this bill. After the July 8th KKK rally, we had asked the Charlottesville City Council, sent them several recommendations, including establishing a weapons-free safety zone around Emancipation Park where all weapons would be prohibited. And there would be a surveillance perimeter that would exclude people from bringing in any of those weapons. We feel that the events on August the 11th.
I hate to do it, but we're going to have to take your written comments. I appreciate your being here.
We see this as an issue of mob rule as illustrated on August 11th and August 12th versus the ability of municipalities to establish public order and safety.
Thank you. Appreciate your being here. The rest of the speakers, if you want to step up, state your name, organization, and that you support the bill.
Sure. Good morning. My name is Dr. Wes Bellamy. I am a city councilman in Charlottesville, Virginia. I am in full support of this bill as well as many of our constituents.
Thank you
to really
very
help
much.
you all do the right thing.
Mr. Chairman, Roger Wiley. I'm speaking for the Virginia Municipal League, which does support this bill.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, my name is Dave McCoy, representing the Virginia Association of Campus Law Enforcement Administrators. We fully support this bill.
Thank you.
Pam Fouchot, Peninsula Indivisible. This is also about intimidation.
Thank you. All right,
We
those who
support
wish
the
to
bill.
speak in opposition to the bill, step up.
I thought there was still time left. Is there not? To support the bill?
I'm Kristen Kalaja, constituent of Senator Sturtevant, and I support the bill.
All right. Thank you.
Philip Van Cleve, the VCDL, we oppose the bill. In fact, right now, if we held a rally at the bell tower, which we're going to do at 11 o'clock, it's a permitted event. This whole building would, y'all would have to leave your guns somewhere else. That whole nebulous situation of where the boundaries are, the movies, you could be sitting in a restaurant and a parade goes by unexpectedly, and you're in violation. And you don't need guns to be a weapon. I mean, there were some severe beatings shown on that video, and people need to be able to protect themselves. Things can happen if these emotions get high, but innocent people shouldn't be hurt. So we oppose.
Mr. Chairman, Bob Sadler, South Richmond. Preemption has been in place since 2004, and it has been a lifesaver in preventing citizens from being turned into accidental criminals just for crossing imaginary boundaries. It is a bad idea to start chipping away at it. It should be left in place, expanded if anything.
Thank you.
Aaron Luke with the National Rifle Association. We oppose this bill. By allowing these ordinances, it creates patchwork of laws throughout the state where an otherwise law-abiding citizen could become an unknowing criminal. While unfortunate, those intent on doing harm are rarely stopped by these types of ordinances, even when it doesn't concern firearms, whether it's a vehicle or something else. So, and with any sort of barrier or you know, 1,000 feet outside an area, somebody who maybe lives within that perimeter, or if it's a parade and it's a moving perimeter, could have their right to defend themselves removed just by walking outside their home and having nothing to do with the actual event that's taking place. So again, we ask the committee to oppose these bills. Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much. All right.
Mr. Chairman.
Senator McDougal.
I know that there are a lot of differing thoughts on this committee about whether this is the direction we should go or not. For me, I do not think it's the positive direction to go, and I would move that we PBI the bill.
All right. It's been moved and seconded that the bill be passed by indefinitely. Senator Sasslaw.
I'd move the substitute motion that the bill be reported.
Second.
All right. There's a substitute motion that the bill be reported in its present form. The substitute motion is before us. All right. The roll is open on to report. Oh, I'm sorry. Okay.
Ayes 6, noes 9.
All right. The primary motion is to pass the bill by indefinitely.
Mr.
Open the
Chairman.
roll.
Haven't voted on the, and we're still not.
No. Open the. This is on to pass the bill by indefinitely.
Ayes 10, noes 5.
All right, the bill is passed by indefinitely. Thank you very much. Do you have another bill, Sir McClellan?
Yeah, I'm going to roll my Senate Bill 288 into Senator Favola's Senate Bill 119. And as I do that, this one was also requested by the Chief of Police for the City of Richmond, and Deputy Drew can answer any questions after Senator Favola has presented if necessary.
All right. So your bill 288 into
119.
119.
Into what?
All right. Now, okay. Now, I would note that this is one of the bills that is in identical form to a bill introduced last year.
Correct. That's correct.
Senate Bill 809 that was last year passed by indefinitely on a 9-6 vote. Not that I want to short circuit it, but there are a lot of bills and certainly want to give you an opportunity to be heard.
I'll be very brief, Mr. Chairman. What this bill does is it would require an individual who realizes a firearm has been lost or stolen to report that to either the local police or the state police within 24 hours. And then the police would be required to enter that information into the National Crime Information Center. It's maintained by the FBI. I just want to note that, you know, stolen guns help supply the market for crimes rather regularly. And a U.S. Department of Treasury study revealed that 25% of gun trafficking investigations involved stolen firearms. And it's also important to note that another study found that states without mandatory lost or stolen reporting laws export 2.5 times more crime guns across state lines than those jurisdictions with such laws. I'm not telling the committee any information we haven't already heard, but Virginia has been noted as one of these gun-running states. I think it's time we stop that and we take positive action. I ask you to pass this bill.
But the people who are victims of a loss or a theft, I mean, they're not gun runners. I mean, are they? And this is what
Well, the
this
fact is, well,
addresses.
they're not necessarily gun runners, but if they don't report the stolen firearm, it's in the hands of somebody who obviously could not be doing something noble and probably not following the law.
Okay.
Mr. Chair.
All right, questions?
Senator
Peterson.
Favole, let me ask you,
Mr. Chairman?
how would somebody actually prosecute this? I mean, again, if you have a situation where your family owns firearms, your deceased parents or grandparents own firearms, and, I mean, who's going to be accountable for that? I mean, again, I just don't see how something like this would actually be prosecuted. I understand it's good to report when something gets stolen, but
Right.
lost is a little bit different. And
That's a fair statement. The section B, as you know, in the bill has has language about a civil penalty and fines. But to your point, if somebody doesn't know it's lost, or if somebody, I mean, this bill only applies if the person actually knows.
right.
But
I guess my follow-up question, Mr. Chair, is
Senator Peterson.
typically the Commonwealth's attorney will bring a criminal charge. A civil charge, I don't even really know who would bring it. Would the county attorney bring it? Would you have to self-report and say, gosh, I forgot to do this? And
I guess I would defer to counsel on that. I don't have an answer to that question.
Well, these are all issues that we discussed last year when the bill was before us. And I would also note, Senator Wexton is here. She also has Senate Bill 433 that is identical, except that the civil penalties in Senator Wexton's bill are more severe, higher than in these two bills. So it may be that we will want to.
Mr. Chairman, I'm happy for my bill to be rolled into.
Okey-doke. All right.
So moved. Second.
All right, we might as well do that right now. Motion is to roll Senate Bills 119 and 433 into Senate Bill 288. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed? All right. The vehicle is Senate Bill 288. Okay,
It's
anything
Senate Bill
further?
It's not Senate Bill 119, which is what I was speaking
I'm
to.
sorry, it's
You meant-
119.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
I lost track of
I have these bill
who
numbers.
who wants it. It's Senator Peterson.
okay, one last question, and maybe this will change this from the stick to the carrot. What if you just eliminated subsection B, which is the civil penalty, and just left if you did report it and it's subsequently used in a crime, then you won't be held liable for the crime, which in other words, people would have an incentive. I think that's better because I just can't imagine a Commonwealth's attorney prosecuting somebody for $50.
No, that's fair.
It's not
that's
going to
fair.
happen.
Mr. Chairman, Senator Peterson, I'm happy to accept that amendment.
Within there's no.
So with that amendment, one would
basically-
be subject to criminal prosecution but not civil penalty. Okay.
I thought you made it more of an incentive. We
Right.
would remove section B.
You just take out section B.
Yeah, we're just removing section B.
Section B.
Right.
And I'm fine with that.
Well, I'll move that if I can get a second.
That's what Mr.
There you go.
All right, it's been moved and seconded to remove section B. Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye. All opposed?
No.
All right, it fails 1-1. All right, let's open the roll. I said we'd vote in the event of any dissent. This is to amend to remove section B. All in, clerk will open the roll. All right, so the bill is before us in its amended form. Let's hear from supporters and opponents, very briefly.
Deputy Chief Steve Drew of the Richmond Police Department, we certainly support this bill, agree with taking out Section B. That's what we're trying to promote is responsible gun ownership that will help us in investigations, know what kind of firearms are out there on the street and how we can better address them. Thank you, sir.
Can't legislate everything.
How would you enforce it? You wouldn't.
Chairman, excuse me, committee members, David Mitchell, General Counsel for the Richmond Police Department. What's important to think about is if the police departments across the state lack a lot of information regarding firearms that are later recovered in crimes, you need to think about working backwards. We don't start with the firearm being stolen. We start with the firearm being recovered by police when a crime is committed days, weeks, or months down the road. And if the police can't ascertain where that firearm came from, there are many crimes that could be going unsolved. Home invasions, vehicle burglaries, other items that were stolen in the larceny, perhaps credit card fraud, drug related. There are a lot. You can't think of it as on the front end, but on the back, allowing the officers to have sufficient information when they recover the firearm to then trace back and solve other crimes. And this is not to punish lawful, law-abiding gun owners who are victims of crimes already. We're not victimizing victims. We're just providing information to law enforcement. Thank you.
Josh Horowitz, Educational Fund to Stop Gun Violence. Just a couple quick points, Mr. Chairman, to get to Senator Peterson's point. I think it's knowledge plus 24 hours is when you have to report. You were asking me when you had to report on that. I also want to make the point that John Lott said a lot of crime is driven by stolen firearms. This is something to help law enforcement with that. And I'll make the point that Virginia, this is new data that you haven't heard before, Virginia is one of the top 5 outside sources of guns linked to crimes in 13 other states. It's the top source of crime guns in the District of Columbia, Maryland, New York, and West Virginia. And of course, stolen guns from Virginia are leading the recovery in Virginia itself.
Thank you very much.
Mr. Chairman,
yes, sir.
Andrew Goddard, Virginia Centre for Public Safety. We support this bill, especially with the amendment, because we prefer the idea of the carrot and not the stick. One thing that's not been mentioned is this would have a chilling effect on straw purchasing. A straw purchaser who serially goes out and buys guns for people who shouldn't be able to have them is not going to want to go to the police station every week and report that, oh, you're not going to believe this, but that gun I bought on Saturday has already been stolen. So that's a good point.
Thank you very much. All right.
Mr. Chairman.
Senator McDougall.
Mr. Chairman, I don't know if the committee realized this, but by voting to eliminate subsection B, you've now made it a criminal class 1 misdemeanor because any violation not specifically delineated in the code is determined to be a misdemeanor. So now if you don't report your firearm within 24 hours, you're a misdemeanor. But with that, Mr. Chairman, I move that this bill be PBI'd.
All right, it's been moved. Is there a second? All right, it's been moved and seconded to pass the bill by
Mr. Chairman,
indefinitely.
substitute motion, the bill be reported.
Second. Substitute motion is to report the bill. All right, all in favor? Well, clerk will open the roll. This is to report the bill.
Ayes 6, noes 9.
All right, the primary motion is to pass the bill by indefinitely. Clerk will open the roll.
Well, that's just going to
Or reverse the vote. Open the roll.
what I would have done is,
Okay.
Ayes 11, noes 4.
Did everybody get their vote in there right? No. I suspect maybe not.
I think it's just fine, Mr. Chairman.
Somebody want to move to reconsider?
So moved.
Huh? Oh, okay. Haven't reported it. We'll strike the board. Clerk will reopen the roll. The motion is to pass a bill by indefinitely.
Ayes 9, noes 6.
All right. Bills are passed by indefinitely. Thank you very much. Next, Senator Chase, you ready? Finished? Is it? I'm sorry, Senator Favoli, do you have another?
I have several
I'm really
others.
sorry.
Do you want me to keep going?
Yeah,
I'll just
sure,
go on
why
my
not?
I'm just doing the gun safety bills.
Yeah.
Senate Bill 732, I did ask that an amendment be prepared. And what this will do, once you read the amendment, is it will say an individual who is found guilty of 2 misdemeanors, and it would be a misdemeanor against a household member or stalking, would lose their firearm for 2 years and then petition the court to restore their firearm rights. That would be the extent of the bill. And I just want to say this is a bill that was based on research done by a UVA professor who found that of domestic violence or the violent behaviors such as the behaviors identified in this bill almost always accelerate. So it would be appropriate to take some intervention right away. 85% of domestic violence victims are women, and nearly half of all women were murdered by an intimate partner. About 4,000 women die each year as a result of domestic violence. And again, we're trying to intervene early, and 1 in 4 women will experience domestic violence at some point. I do have speakers, Mr. Chairman.
All right. Be more than happy to hear those who wish to speak in favor of this bill. Step up. Yes, ma'am. Whoops, sorry, Hobie.
Good morning. My name is Kelly Roscom. I'm the legal director of the Educational Fund to Stop Gun Violence. Thank you for your time this morning, and thank you to Senator Favola for sponsoring this bill. 19 other states and the District of Columbia currently prohibit purchase and possession of firearms by persons who have been convicted of misdemeanor crimes of domestic violence. Frequently, domestic abusers commit multiple acts of domestic violence before they are convicted of a crime. It is also an escalating event that will continue to happen. Stalking often precedes intimate partner violence and intimate partner homicide. There is no reason that people who commit acts of abuse against their family or household members should be able to keep and possess firearms. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Anybody else wish to speak in favor of this bill? Anybody wish to? Yes, sir. Mr. Goddard.
Just register the support of the Virginia Center for Public Safety for this bill.
All right. Anybody? All right. Would be happy to hear from folks who wish to speak in opposition to the bill. Unless there's...
Mr. Chairman, Bob Sadler, Virginia Citizens Defense League. And as always, we vehemently, categorically oppose any attempt to restrict constitutional rights for misdemeanors. Now, if we want to talk about turning domestic violence into a felony, we're open to that. But there is a reason that misdemeanors and felonies are entirely separate categories of crime. And misdemeanors simply don't qualify as life-changing events. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Yes, ma'am. I'm sorry, there are a couple other, one, at least one other.
Apologize. Aaron Loop with the National Rifle Association, and we oppose this bill. Thank you.
All right. So, under federal law, my understanding is that misdemeanors involving domestic violence already carry a prohibition on ownership and possession of firearms.
That's my understanding, Mr. Chairman. Stalking is not included under the federal law, so this would be a law on our state books, another tool in the toolbox, perhaps easier for us to prosecute because we don't really have the resources to prosecute under the federal law. That
Right.
was my interest in going forward with this.
And I think some who have some concerns about legislation that would essentially impact a constitutional right when it's not a felony, for which it's clear that you do lose certain constitutional rights. Senator Howell.
Mr. Chairman, I have a similar bill, and although there's federal requirements on this, our local law enforcement doesn't arrest based on the federal. So we're in this catch-22 where I believe we should be trying to make it consistent with the federal.
So you want yours rolled in?
No, thank you.
All right. Bills before us.
Report.
All right, there's a motion to report the bill. Any I'm sorry. Oh, and it does need to go to finance. So motion is to report and re-refer the bill to finance.
Mr. Chair, substitute motion, PBI.
All right, substitute motion properly seconded to pass the bill by indefinitely. Clerk will open the roll. This is to pass the bill by indefinitely.
Ayes 8, noes 7.
All right, thank you. Next.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have two hate crime bills. One of my hate crime bills is, it merely adds the phrase disability to the current state
Do you have
code.
witnesses here on these?
I'm sorry?
I say, do you?
I do, but
Okay.
not a lot.
All right, that's fine. Go right
Go
ahead.
ahead.
Didn't mean to interrupt you.
Okay. So again, it merely adds the word disability to the state hate
We're
crime
doing
code.
45 first, right?
And I just want you to note that,
What's the number?
45?
I'm sorry, Senate Bill 45.
Okay.
Hate crimes against people with disabilities are underreported to law enforcement. And it's a phenomenon that I guess we can all understand. The victim is frequently afraid of retaliation or not being believed, or may have to rely on a caretaker to do the reporting or to assist in the reporting. This is simply a category that I believe certainly should be included. We had that situation in Chicago where an individual who had a developmental disability was tortured is a strong word, but certainly abused by peers, again, simply because the individual is different. 32 states have hate crime statutes to protect people with disabilities. I really do think this is time for Virginia to move forward with this.
Okay. You have people who wish to speak in favor of the bill?
Yes, Colleen Miller from the Disability Law Center was here earlier. I don't know if she's still here.
Right behind you.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman. Colleen Miller, Disability Law Center. We do support this legislation. We hope that the committee will carefully consider it in order to extend this protection to some of our most vulnerable citizens in Virginia. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. Anybody else wish to speak in favor of this bill? Anybody wish to speak in opposition to the bill? Let me just ask real briefly, Council. Is there a real neat definition of disability?
No, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Chairman, this Americans with Disability Act, it's got some.
That's exactly my fear. If I'm nearsighted, could that qualify as a disability under this?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
So you would be covered then?
Thank you.
Mr. Chair.
All right.
Chairman.
Sarah Stanley.
I mean, is there anywhere in the code, and Stephen, you may know this, where disability is defined so as to keep maybe Senator Obenshain's nearsightedness out of this category?
There are definitions.
Yes, there are definitely definitions. Yeah, but I mean, Reagan's got an IEP because you can't say shut and fall.
Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman.
I got it. Mr. Chairman.
Senator Edwards.
I mentioned the Americans with Disability Act because there are definitions in that act. We could borrow from the federal act.
Right. Right. That's exactly right. Mr. Chair.
Mr. Chairman.
Steve.
Mr. Chair.
Responding
Hang
to
on.
the earlier question, one of the definitions, for example, is in the workman's comp section. And it defines disability as a partial or total loss of use of an arm, hand, leg, foot, eye, finger, toe, or any combination, et cetera.
Mr. Chairman.
That doesn't encompass Down syndrome.
Mr. Chair.
Mr. Chairman.
Hang on one second. Senator Peterson, then Senator McDougal.
I was simply going to say, I don't believe we define the word race, religion, or ethnicity in the code either. And yet we've had this on the books. So.
All right, Senator McDougal.
Mr. Chairman, I would say in the educational area, there are a number of additional disabilities, including the ability to pronounce words or dyslexia or any of those types of challenges that an individual may have. Mr. Chairman, I have a motion at appropriate time.
Now would be an appropriate time.
move to PBI.
All right. There's been a motion to pass the bill by indefinitely.
Substitute motion. Substitute motion that we report the bill.
Previous question. Huh? Oh, I'm sorry. This is first of all, we need to adopt the substitute. Let's do that first. Senator Edwards moves and Senator Peterson seconds the adoption of the substitute before us. All in favor of adopting the substitute signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed. Substitute is before us. Senator Edwards.
Move report.
Was a motion to pass the bill by indefinitely. Senator Edwards made the substitute motion to report the bill, which has been properly seconded. So the motion before us, the substitute motion is to report the bill. Clerk will open the roll.
Ayes 7, noes 8.
All right. This primary motion is to pass the bill by indefinitely. The clerk will open the roll on passing the bill by indefinitely.
Ayes 6, noes 9.
Everybody got that right? All right, you want to make a motion? Let's strike the roll since its vote hadn't been announced. This is to PBI the bill. Okay. Clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 8, noes 7.
All right.
Mr. Chairman, I have Senate Bill 112, which is another hate crimes bill. This bill adds gender, disability, gender identity, and sexual orientation to the state hate crimes law.
All right, Senator, there's a substitute being distributed. Senator Howell moves and Senator Stewart seconds the adoption of the substitute. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed. Substitute is before us.
I didn't realize there was a substitute.
That's all right.
Maybe it was an editorial.
That's all right.
Change. So again, this, this bill brings our state code into conformity with the federal code. And it's really important. I believe that all Virginians feel that they are safe and valued. And when we make a statement that, hate crimes should be prosecuted in a more aggressive way, I think it sends a message about inclusiveness. This bill talks about civil actions and, of course, the liability for defamatory material on the internet and the assault and battery section. I just want you to note that in Virginia in 2015, there were 155 hate crime offenses, including 71 assaults and 49 acts of vandalism or damage to the property. And this represents a 21% increase over the prior year, and an increase in hate crimes was recorded in nearly every reported category. So that tells me that this is an issue. I know that state police do receive information. I know that the state police office, I guess, receives information from local state police jurisdictions or state police units reporting on certain hate crimes. But that's all voluntary, and I really think it's time that we amend our hate crime statute. I believe there are some speakers.
All right, thank you very much. Those who wish to speak in favor of this bill, step right up.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and
Yes,
committee
sir.
members. My name is Joseph Papa. I'm with Equality Virginia, and we strongly support this bill. Violent hate crimes against LGBT people are a pervasive problem and the third most common in the country. A 2006 report out of the FBI shows that hate crimes committed against gay people, of all the hate crimes committed that year, 16% were based on sexual orientation. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for being here. Anybody else wish to speak in favor of the bill? Anybody wish to speak in opposition to the bill? Step right up.
Mr. Chairman, Josh Setzler, Legislative Counsel with the Family Foundation. We would point out that this bill, as well as all hate crimes legislation, amounts to thought crime. I think that's a very bad idea for the government to wade into those waters of criminalizing a person's thoughts separate from their actions. And for that reason, we would oppose it. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I have a question of the Speaker.
Senator Edwards, go
Yeah.
right ahead. And we're not going to engage in debates with folks who are kind enough to come testify
Yeah,
on
appreciate
either
you coming.
side.
But isn't it a fact, though, that you're criminalizing actions, not thoughts, in these bills?
Well, you can go right ahead and answer that one question as a courtesy to Senator Edwards, if you don't mind.
Mr. Chairman, I believe the action is already criminalized. This enhances the penalty for certain acts, which in essence creates a certain penalty solely for the belief. And now we're in a position to where the government is judging the relative value of certain beliefs and opinions over others.
Mr. Chairman, I have another question. Don't we do that in the case of killing? There's murder, there's manslaughter, and other categories that deal with the mental intent for the act? Don't we do that in that category?
Certainly, Mr. Chairman, if you will indulge, I'll answer another question. In those cases, Senator Edwards, you're dealing with motive and intent, not a thought as far as how much you love or hate someone. You're dealing. So I think it's certainly different by its very nature.
Mr. Chairman, Mr. Chairman, one other. When it comes to criminal acts, you have a combination of both mental intent and the event itself, correct?
Well, hang on. We're not going to, John.
Is that right? It's a question.
Why don't you reserve that for your argument, closing argument?
I have enjoyed it.
Thank you.
Eddie Ayler, Virginia Assembly Independent Baptist. We believe that any crime is going to be motivated by hate. Personally, I would not even want religion or other things listed. I think anybody who gets attacked should be treated equitably insofar as those types of things.
All right.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much. Bill's before us.
Move report.
All right. It's been moved and seconded. The bill be reported. Clerk will open the roll.
Six ayes, 9 noes.
All right. Bill fails to report. You have another bill?
Mr. Chairman, I do have one more. You had mentioned you wanted to hear it in the afternoon. Do you want me to go forward with it now, or?
Is that the child support?
Yes.
Do you have witnesses, or? Because if you don't, we do have other bills for which they're witnesses. I'm
So
sorry.
I'd rather wait. I may have.
Thank you. Okay. All right. Senator Chase.
Very good. Senate Bill 715,
Do we-
concealed carry, and I've met with Roger Riley with VML VACO and Ed Rhodes with Virginia Association of Medical Services.
We have an amendment or substitute?
Yes. And so that's what I'm getting to.
Okay.
This is going to basically, it gives the elected governing locality the ability to accept or reject this provision. The locality, however, cannot restrict private companies. It also requires that the Department of Criminal Justice Services, in consultation with the Office of EMS.
Mr. Chairman, is there a language that we have?
Is there a substitute or an amendment? Okay, go through. Charles, why don't you report what you understand the concept to be?
What I understand the concept of the substitute to be would be any firefighter as defined in 65.2, basically through emergency medical services personnel who has a concealed carry permit can carry, provided that such person is employed or a volunteer as an EMS personnel, has been approved by his fire chief or emergency medical services chief, and they can carry whenever they are in the performance of their duties, provided that the elected governing locality has adopted the chief's and the EMS's chief's recommendation. And this would not infringe on private companies, and that DCJS and EMS would come up with some sort of policy or to implement this.
That is correct.
All right, so you like all that?
Yes.
Okay.
Mr. Chair, and just, I'm trying to understand the concept. It only applies to those people who already have concealed carry permits?
That's correct, Mr. Chairman.
Okay.
And only if the county or city approve in addition to the agency.
If it is a county function, there's county and then there's private.
Right. All right. Somebody want to move the amendments?
So moved.
It's been moved and seconded to adopt the amendments. All in favor of adopting the amendments signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed, the amendments are adopted. Bill's before us. Is there a motion?
Mr. Chairman, I have a question.
All right, go right ahead.
Now that we're having DCJS involved, is there a fiscal impact?
I'm hearing that there might be, so it may be prudent. I mean, if it winds up that there's not, finance will move it right along. But if there is, I think the appropriate motion should be to report and re-refer the Committee on Finance.
So moved.
All right, it's been moved and seconded. All in favor, the clerk will open the roll. All right. You're moving right along. Thank you for your work on this. I appreciate the group. Next, we have Senator Barker. Long-suffering Senator Barker.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. This is the bill dealing with risk warrants.
What number?
It is 276. It's a bill I've been working on for a couple of years here, trying to address issues and be able to come up with something that provides appropriate protections and due process to be able to deal with situations in which someone who has guns is adjudicated to be a danger to themselves or others in this particular situation.
All right. I would point out that this is 276. It's identical to your 1443 from last year, which failed to report on a 5 to 10 vote. I'm not saying that to predestinate Presbyterian that I am, but simply to point out to the members of the committee that they've seen this before.
Yes.
And this allows removal of firearms if somebody has been deemed a substantial risk. And to refresh some recollection, I think that there were in the past some constitutional concerns raised about the bill. It does allow police to enter and search a person's residence, seize their property on a mere allegation that they are a danger without due process, which raises some concerns. I mean, I don't think that people took issue with your motivation last year, but some of these practical concerns are difficult to address. Okay.
All right. Yes. Thank you, Mr. Chair. And being a good Presbyterian myself, I do understand the predestination thing. So, but my intent is to continue to try to figure some way to be able to address some of these concerns. And I think we do have some additional information that we did not have when we presented it last year, with additional studies and those types of things, and some additional court cases. Because this is something that has been tried in other states and has been has withstood the constitutional challenges in those states, so that it's continued to exist in Connecticut and Indiana and some other states that have this proposal there. what the bill basically does to try to address the constitutional issues and the due process concerns that people have. It does not target any particular type of gun. It does not permanently bar anyone from being able to have a gun and to be protected with their Second Amendment rights. It does provide for opportunity for someone to initiate action to temporarily remove it, but it's not a citizen, can't go into the judicial system, has to be a Commonwealth's attorney or a law enforcement officer. It does not go to a magistrate or even a general district court judge, it goes to a circuit court judge. And within 14 days after the action is taken by the circuit court judge, there has to be a hearing on this thing, or that is revoked. So I think it does provide a fair amount of protections there. I'm sure some will say they wish there were more. But I think it does address that. It clearly it says you must have probable cause to be able to initiate the action and to be able to do it when you go to the court hearing within the 14 days after the risk warrant is issued. It has to be proven by clear and convincing evidence.
All right.
It is particularly useful in many instances where someone is at risk of suicide, which is a critical issue in Virginia as well as many other states. We're higher in terms of gun suicide deaths in Virginia, and the majority of suicides in Virginia are by guns. So there are some people who can want to testify and can address some of the issues that you're alluding to in terms
Can't
of
they be
process.
committed if they're at risk of suicide?
What is listed here is that these are people who do not their behavior and everything does not rise to the level whereby a temporary detention order can be issued.
All right, thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I have a question.
Sarah Edwards.
You say it's been challenged, similar bills have been challenged in other states. Tell me about the constitutional due process challenges in other states that have actually upheld these.
If I could, what I would like to do is defer to a couple of people who are going to testify because they're more expert on that than I am.
All right.
So.
All right. Be happy to hear from people in support.
Mr. Chair, I'd just address Senator Edwards' question really quickly. On the Second Amendment issue, Reddington versus Indiana and Hope for State have upheld similar grounds because the deprivation is short. It's a court order prior to the deprivation. On the due process concerns, it's exactly the same for domestic violence orders. And so there's all the challenges to the DV order where there's a temporary ex parte order and then a court challenge, then a court decision where both parties come in, have been upheld on the due process grounds. So we're very confident both on Second Amendment grounds and on due process. It mirrors other processes. We feel comfortable with that.
Mr. Chairman, do you know the states that have done this?
Yes. So the states that have done
upheld the due process challenge.
The challenges have been in Connecticut and Indiana, which have similar laws and have been upheld. Now, Washington, Oregon, and California also have added. So there's 5 states now that have a similar process. The Connecticut, just one piece of brand new information, the Connecticut study has been recently evaluated, and for every 10 to 20 risk warrants served, 1 life is saved. So it's an important piece there. And finally, just back to the due process issue, these aren't allegations. These are something that a judge has to sign off on prior to a risk warrant that a law enforcement officer has brought to a judge, and the judge has to sign off on it.
So, Mr. Chairman, there are 5 states that have upheld it?
There are 2 court decisions that have upheld it, one in Connecticut, one in Indiana. And there's 5 states that have passed the bill now. And in the states that Washington, Oregon, and California, there has not been challenges to the bill.
Okay.
All right. Thank you very much.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee.
Welcome.
Thank you. We're Barbara and Andy Parker. You may recall that our daughter, the journalist Allison Parker, was murdered on live television 2 years ago.
The man who killed our daughter was fired from several jobs for, among other things, anger issues. When he was fired by WDBJ 7 in Roanoke, he had to be escorted out of the building by law enforcement officers. He was a clear threat to others, and his violent outbursts were witnessed by many. Had the station and law enforcement had this tool, they would have had the ability to assess whether or not he had firearms and taken action.
And we've heard, well, no existing law would have saved your daughter. And they're correct. But if the proposed law that you're considering was in existence then, it might have. and it's time. It is your moral responsibility to enact this law to protect the next Allison. Thank you.
Thank you for being here, and we, Mr. Parker, Mrs. Parker.
Pam, please show Peninsula Indivisible.
Hang on 1 second,
Yes.
okay? Mr. and Mrs. Parker, thank you very much for being here. Thank you for your words, and we are very sorry for your loss, so thank you. Yes, ma'am. Step up and state your name and organization and your support, real briefly.
Pam, please show Peninsula Indivisible. We do support. And
Thank
I
you.
just want to point out that majority of the mass shootings
Time is up.
in America have because people did not pay attention ahead of time when it could have been prevented.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, Andrew Goddard, Virginia Centre for Public Safety, we support the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Goddard.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, Virginia Catholic Conference, we also support.
Thank you.
Good morning, Lori House with the Educational Fund to Stop Gun Violence.
Lori, thank you.
We support the bill, and the bill's intention is to give families and law enforcement tools to address these situations where people are in crisis, don't rise to the level of a mental health adjudication and are ordered into treatment, but it is just a stopgap measure. We've seen a 21% increase in gun suicides in the Commonwealth in the last 10 years, and this is to give families tools to help their loved ones in crisis. Please give this due consideration, and we urge you to pass the bill. Thank you. Thank you, Senator.
Those who wish to speak in opposition to the bill.
Mr. Chairman, Bob Sadler, Virginia Citizens Defense League. For the reasons that you yourself have already touched on, we echo your concerns and strongly oppose the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Sadler.
Good morning. My name is William Barrett. I'm a constituent of Senator Howell from Arlington, and I'm a member of VCDL. I'm not speaking officially on behalf of the organization. I also urge you to oppose this bill. I think there's a lot of potential for abuse, unfortunately, where someone would have the possibility of having their guns taken away from them. And while 14 days is temporary, that could be an awfully long time if you're under threat. If someone, in a domestic violence situation, falsely accuses you of something, your firearms are taken away, and then that could be a 2-week period where you're totally defenseless in a sense while you're trying to have your rights restored.
Thank you.
Aaron Looper, the National Rifle Association. We oppose this bill for the reasons that you mentioned before. It removes firearms without due process based on only an allegation. Thank you.
All right, thank you. All right, bills before us.
Mr. Chair,
Senator Peterson.
could I ask 2 questions?
You must.
Sorry about that. First of all, who initiates this petition? Is it the Commonwealth's attorney?
Yes, the petition must be initiated either by a law enforcement officer or the Commonwealth's attorney.
So it's not going to be like your...
You and I couldn't do it, so.
Okay, all right. Secondly, what happens, from reading, the Commonwealth holds the weapon for 6 months, then what happens?
It's returned to the individual.
Okay.
The individual gets the gun back at a maximum of 180 days. It may be that, they can go into court after 30 days after the removal and ask to have it returned, as long as there's by that point, there's no problem that it would be, or the local police can also voluntarily do it.
All right, bills before us.
Move to report. Second.
It's been moved and seconded the bill be reported. Clerk will open the roll.
Ayes 6, noes 9.
Senator Barker, thank you very much.
Thank you, appreciate it.
Senator Marsden.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Senate Bill 794.
All right, this, I believe, is very similar to Senate Bill 742, Senator Spruill's bill. And I don't know whether Senator Spruill is planning to come. The difference between these, primary difference, is that his is a Class 6 felony. Yours is Class 1 misdemeanor.
That's correct, Mr. Chairman.
All right.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This Senate Bill 794, this bill would restrict high-capacity magazines designed for semi-automatic weapons to a limit of 10 rounds, and it would eliminate the ability to import, transfer, or sell such magazines. It would also make it unlawful to carry any weapon with an existing magazine that contains more than 10 rounds in public. It does not deal with possession. It allows certainly existing weapons to be maintained by an individual if they already own one, and it does provide an exclusion for certain law enforcement categories. Mr. Chairman, this is the, when I looked at what happened in Las Vegas, and I tried to temper my exuberance to do a number of things, but to come up with something that actually might have slowed this individual down, which is the size of the magazine that he had in his weapon, recognizing that bump stocks can be duplicated by the human hand and what have you, that having to change magazines may have been something that could have saved some lives. And so with that, I ask that you consider the bill.
Okay. Anybody wish to speak in favor of this bill?
Can I ask a question, Mr. Chair?
Sir, indeed.
And I apologize because I guess I didn't have notice this was on the docket, and I don't have a copy of the bill, and I'm just trying to look at it real quickly online. Does this apply only to semi-automatic weapons, or does it apply to all firearms?
It applies to semi-automatic weapons, which can include pistols, certainly.
Okay, well, Mr. Chair, I mean, as I recall, I've used just rifles that would hold 10 to 12 rounds. Hunting rifles, would it apply to any gun that holds?
Magazines are defined as either internal or external. So when I've used the term magazines, it does apply to both, but it does not apply to any existing weapons in terms of their ability to possess them. You can, but you cannot take them out in public.
Which would include hunting on national or state park?
I would assume so, yes, but not on private property or places where you're permitted to hunt.
Okay. All right. Those who wish to speak in favor of this bill, step right up.
Good morning, members of the committee. My name is Peter Reed. I'm speaking on behalf of myself and my daughter Mary, who is one of the 32 students and faculty shot to death on the campus of Virginia Tech, April 16, 2007. I'm a constituent of Senator Peterson. If I were on the other side of Wakefield Chapel Road, I'd be a constituent of Senator Marsden. I strongly support this legislation, and I think you can understand why. Any opportunity in a situation like that my daughter faced for intervention to prevent an increased casualty count is a good intervention. And I strongly support the bill, and I hope this committee will support the bill.
Mr. Reed, thank you for being here. I appreciate your taking the time to share.
Thank you, sir. I wish I could have been here earlier this morning.
We're sorry for your loss.
Martina Lyons. I am a constituent of Senator Marsden. Thank you so much, Senator Marsden, for introducing this very important bill, which I encourage you all to pass. It is really common sense. These magazines need to be limited. We need to prevent the tragedy that happened at Virginia Tech from happening again. No one should be made to suffer what the family of Peter Reed has had to suffer. Thank you.
Pam Pouchot, Peninsula Indivisible. I went online last night, took me less than 5 minutes to find a 100-round drum attachment for an AR-15, for a Glock handgun, 50-round drum. Generally speaking, when there's a mass shooting, the shooter is taken down when he's changing magazines. When he's got 100, he doesn't have to bother to stop till everybody's dead.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, Andrew Goddard, Virginia Center for Public Safety, is the father of someone who was shot at Virginia Tech 4 times by someone using a large capacity magazine. I am still suffering, my son is still suffering from the effects of that. He's had an operation recently. He's now recently showing signs of lead poisoning from those remaining bullets. I'm definitely opposed to large capacity magazines. I see there no particular value in public. Thank you.
All right. Thank you.
Good morning, Lori House with the Educational Fund to Stop Gun Violence. We adamantly support the bill. Thank you.
Brian Moran, Secretary of Public Safety and Homeland Security. The administration supports the bill.
Mr. Chairman, Mr. Moran, or maybe the senator, where did the 10 rounds come from, designed to hold more than, not more than 10 rounds? What's, as opposed to 8 or 12 or some other figure?
Well, Senator Edwards, I think that's probably an arguable point, but one has to start somewhere. But an unlimited number of rounds is inappropriate.
Let me, at Virginia Tech, he had a Glock. How many rounds could he have held, could he hold, do you know?
I'm not knowledgeable about the capacity of of particular weapons in terms of their internal mechanisms, but in terms of something that is inserted into the weapon as a magazine or commonly known as a clip, this would reduce that to 10. And like I say, we're not taking anybody's weapons away or making them illegal. You're still allowed to possess them. You just won't be able to take them out into public, and you would not be able to purchase, transfer, or import them.
Well, Mr. Chairman, you could still hold several magazines in your pocket, right?
That is correct. This is not a panacea for anything. Senator Edwards is just designed in the worst of circumstances to slow some of these disturbed individuals down. And as it was testified to just a moment ago, is that usually when police are able to intervene in these situations, it's when somebody is attempting to reload. And that's also an opportunity when things can go wrong, where the gun can get jammed and slow down the process.
Does any other state have something like this?
California.
Yeah, I think there are. I could be wrong. I think there are 8 states who have some kinds of limitations.
Okay, and they've been upheld. Okay. 10.
All right.
California's at 10.
Senator Stanley.
Mr. Chairman, respectfully, I move to pass the bill by indefinite.
Second.
All right. There is a motion to pass the bill by indefinitely.
I'll second.
All right. It's been moved and seconded. Clerk will open the roll.
Ayes 9, no 6.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
All right.
Have 2 others. We're going to be finally off of the gun trail.
You have another gun bill?
No, I've said I've got 2 others.
We're about out of time. I know Senator Deeds has. We're just going to have to come back to yours on Wednesday. Senator Deeds has one for which I think he has some witnesses here.
I have 3 with witnesses.
All right. Well, we'll see whether we can get to them. So will I.
The first one I want to turn to is 669. Now, what that bill simply does,
Can you do the one we discussed this morning first?
I think that's the one we discussed
Okay.
this morning.
Yeah, it is. That's actually
Okay.
it.
What that simply does, it says if you are subject to a temporary detention order under the age of 18, that you can't possess or purchase a firearm after you're 18. Right now, you can't possess a firearm until you're 18. If you're subject to a TDO after you're 18, you can't possess a firearm. This issue was brought to my attention by a gentleman from Stafford County who said that his son attempted suicide twice under 18. He'd had a temporary detention order, and he was waiting for his 18th birthday. And on his 18th birthday, he got a gun, and he used it. And I've got some witnesses here from Charlottesville, and there's better news in their story. But this bill is simply designed to close that loophole.
Senator Deeds, let me just take a temperature first, because I think that this is a bill upon which there may actually be a fairly broad consensus. And I don't want to stop your witnesses from testifying. If there are those who have concerns about this, who would like to hear from the pro-witnesses, let me know. Otherwise, I don't want to stop the witnesses in opposition from stepping up if anybody wants to speak in opposition to this bill. Does anybody wish to speak in opposition to this bill?
Bob Sadler, Virginia Citizens Defense League. We oppose the bill.
All right. All right, the bill is before us. Senator Deeds, you want to make a motion?
I'll move to report the bill.
All right. It's been moved and seconded that this 669 be reported. Clerk will open the roll. All right.
Ayes 15, no zero.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you. Thank you, members of the committee. I've got two other bills that are related to the incidents that occurred on August 11th and 12th in Charlottesville, and they're also related to a bill that you heard earlier, 665 and 668. And I know there are people here to testify about them, and I just want to tell you that that day had a profound impact on the community of Charlottesville. One woman lost her life, and two state police officers whose duty was that day to provide some intelligence and also protect the community lost their lives. And I can't tell you how much that incident still dominates conversation in the city of Charlottesville. 665 simply adds Charlottesville and Albemarle County to a list of localities in Virginia where it's unlawful to carry a loaded rifle or firearm that can hold more than 20 rounds or designed by the manufacturer to accommodate a silencer equipped with folding stock or a loaded shotgun with a magazine that can hold more than 7 rounds in a public area. 668 is a little different, and I'll be glad to address them together or apart, whatever.
Well, let's do 665 first.
Okay.
Which adds Albemarle and Charlottesville to the list of localities already listed in Code Section 18.2, 287.4.
And I would remind you, Mr. Chair, that this statute was as recently as 2004 reapproved by the General Assembly when this section of the code was, I guess, recodified. So you've all voted yes.
Yeah,
Or those of you who were there in 2004.
All right.
I'm just asking that these two little communities where we've already seen terror take place in the streets be added.
No, I appreciate that, and that's a very creative argument. But all right, we'll hear from those in support of this bill.
Mr. Chairman, I'm Lisa Robertson. I'm the Chief Deputy City Attorney for the City of Charlottesville. With me here today are two of our city councilors, Ms. Kathy Galvin and Dr. Wes Bellamy. I also have a Charlottesville police officer who's here to speak on behalf of the entire department, Lieutenant Brian O'Donnell, and a Major Greg Jenkins from the Albemarle County Police Department, which is also in support of both this bill and Bill 668. I will say that one thing that I will mention is that these are not two small communities. These are together a growing urban jurisdiction that have a densely concentrated population in the area of the downtown part of the city, driven in part because we're a major university town. Like the other jurisdictions that are already listed in this statute, the types of firearms that are already restricted by this existing statute are completely at odds with the safety of people in densely populated urban areas. With that, I would ask you to please support this bill. It would greatly enhance, we believe, the public safety within the city of Charlottesville.
And I take it you also support 668 for the same reasons?
Yes, if you'd like me to speak on that, I can just offer a couple of additional comments.
Why don't you go ahead?
We believe that in 668, we are asking for a reasonable measure that would allow our city and other localities the local option to adopt measures that would enhance public safety in accordance with the needs of a particular event. First, we are asking for the authority to adopt temporary restrictions on the ability to carry a firearm. We would like the ability to establish a perimeter and manage an event safely and to preclude the presence of all weapons, not just firearms. We'd like to be able to create safety zones for events at which there are large concentrations of people. Secondly, like many other states, we would like you to give us the authority to regulate the carrying of firearms and other weapons within public buildings that are being used for governmental purposes. Specifically, this would enhance the safety of our city council meetings. We think these are reasonable measures. It is not the city's intent to ban firearms altogether, but given the events of the past year, we and our police department truly believe that these tools would give us a much better ability to manage events and protect the public safety.
Thank you very much. Anybody else wish to speak?
I'm Brian O'Donnell, I'm a lieutenant with the Charlottesville Police Department, and specifically with Bill 665, Charlottesville would just like to enjoy the same protections that Richmond does and other cities in the Commonwealth that bill provides. Secondly, Bill 668, the ability to cordon off and set up a perimeter to not allow weapons in really highly volatile and emotionally charged events would be extremely helpful both to law enforcement and to the community at large. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Greg Jenkins, the Albemarle County Police Department, Deputy Chief with that department, and we support both of these bills.
Thank you very much.
Kathy Galvin, Charlottesville City Councilor. I support both of these bills.
Thank you.
Andrew Goddard, Virginia Center for Public Safety. We support these bills.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, Roger Wiley. VML supports 668. They don't typically take a position on bills that involve only one or two localities, so we don't have any position on the other one.
Thank you. All right. Anybody else? That's it. Anybody wish to speak in opposition to these bills?
Mr. Chairman, Bob Sadler, Virginia Citizens Defense League. Section 287.4 is a relic. It's an archaic holdover from the days before preemption. It's a loophole that needs to be repealed, not expanded. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Sadler.
William Barrett from Arlington. I'm also a graduate of the University of Virginia and a pretty regular visit to Charlottesville still. And I think I'm very disappointed that they're trying to take this approach. I think basically they're using the terrible stuff that happened last summer as an excuse to try to pass some things that they would have wanted anyway.
Mm-hmm.
I think despite the fact that you had crazy racist idiots on one side and people who were rightfully upset and protesting against them on the other side, you didn't have anybody get shot. I mean, that's the most volatile situation you can imagine. And even then, with all the people who were there with guns, nobody got shot. And so somehow that means that we need to have more restrictions on every situation, not just that kind of situation. Doesn't make sense. And especially on 668 with regard to public buildings, that has nothing to do, that's going way beyond a protest situation. This is talking about one locality can ban guns in their library or in their city hall and another one doesn't. And if you're a citizen just trying to get access to government services, you don't know if you cross into a new county and suddenly maybe they have totally different laws and now, oops, you're a criminal, you're a felon. There's a good reason that the General Assembly established preemption of localities in this area, and it should remain. It's been a great benefit to people who are carrying guns for good reason throughout the Commonwealth. Thank you.
Aaron Luper, the National Rifle Association. We oppose any extension of a patchwork of laws throughout the state where law-abiding citizens cannot protect themselves, and we support the General Assembly's current preemption of these throughout the state. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Anybody else wish to speak in opposition? All right, Senator Deeds.
Yes.
Wrap it up.
Both these bills are reactions to the events of this past summer. And one of the reactions has been that city council meetings have been less they've been more unruly, more difficult to conduct since those events. And that's part of the reason why the buildings are included in 668. That bill admittedly is broader than the one that's already been heard by this committee, but given Charlottesville the authority to enact this ordinance makes plenty of good policy sense, I think. In 665, we have already supported this legislation for some localities. It just doesn't make sense for localities of similar size not to be included. Charlottesville was impacted in a significant way by the events of this past summer, and I'd ask you to extend to them some of the courtesies that have been extended to other localities and to allow them to protect their community.
Don't go anywhere. Senator Stewart has a question.
And maybe it's to you, Cree, or somebody. I also make sure I understand this bill based on some of the comments. This actually adds to a Christmas tree of localities where you can't carry a semi-automatic with more than 20 rounds, loaded down the public street with more than 20 rounds, or a shotgun that holds more than 7 rounds, which none of my shotguns hold more than 7 rounds. And it excludes anybody who's lawfully hunting or has a valid concealed handgun permit.
That's correct, Senator
Okay,
Stewart.
I just want to make
This
sure I
legislation
understand.
just adds Charlottesville and Albemarle to a list of localities that can already exempt possession of firearms by certain people.
Okay.
And certain events.
All right, 665 is before us.
Move to report.
All right, it's been moved and seconded 665 be reported. Clerk will open the roll.
Ayes 7, noes 8.
All right, bill fails to report. 668, Mr. Benjamin, I understand there may be an amendment.
There's an amendment, Your Honor, that would make the bill
Thank you.
consistent with the patron's intent. On lines 33 and 34, the patron does not mean to characterize the park as something being used for governmental purposes. And so to effect the intent, on line 33, strike the word "or." On line 34, strike the word "used" and the words "for governmental purposes."
All right, report that one more time, Steve.
As, once you strike that language, then beginning on line 33, the ordinance would deal with a park or recreation area owned by such locality.
Okay. Any questions?
That's fine. I'll move the amendment.
All right, the amendment's been moved. Is there a second? Moved and seconded. All in favor of adopting the amendment signify by saying aye. All opposed, the amendment's adopted.
Then I'll move to report.
All right, that bill is before us. It's been moved and seconded, the bill be reported. Clerk will open the roll.
Ayes 6, noes 9.
All right, bill fails to
Thank you
report.
very
Thank you. I wish that we could continue to go. I'm probably the only one in the room who feels that way, but we have reached the witching hour, and I'm sorry for witnesses who have come all this way to testify, but we'll be back to these bills. So thank you. The committee will rise.